Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the Minute Waltz fades away once more, it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners in this country, but also throughout the world. But also to welcome to the show this week 4 talented, exciting, and experienced players of the game who once more are going to use their verbal dexterity and ingenuity as they pit their wits against each other to gain points in just a minute. And they are, in no order of seniority, Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Linda Smith, and Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? They are going to try and speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score and blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the new theatre in the wonderful, delightful city of Cardiff, the capital of the great Principality of Wales. And as our listeners can hear, we have before us a passionate, hyped-up Welsh audience to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, very apt for this time of year. It is the year ahead. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game starting now?
The year ahead is going to be called the year 2000 and the number between 1 and 3. And I can see the most wonderful things ahead. Cardiff City will be promoted to the First Division. Plymouth Argyle will win the FA Cup. And there will be a new fabric made of the chin fluff of an obscure Mongolian mountain goat, which everyone will try to buy and Vogue will plug like anything. I'm looking forward hugely to the year ahead because I believe that my autobiography, which will be...
Paul Merton has challenged.
Hesitation
Yes.
after shameless plug.
Yes, sir. And well, he might have hesitated after that. Yes, so Paul, you have a correct challenge. You'll receive a point for that, and you take over the subject, which is the year ahead. There are 13 seconds available starting now.
Well, who knows what's going to happen in the year ahead? When we look back at the year just gone, who would have thought that Prince Charles would have ended up marrying Anne Robinson, the wedding of the century? People were aghast. November the 24th, they together walked down the aisle at Westminster Abbey.
In just a minute, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion it was Paul Merton. We now move into the second round, and this is quite a challenge for me because the subject I've been given is a Welsh subject in the Welsh language. And I should explain to all our listeners, it is actually the longest word in the Welsh language. And it is Clanfiar Pwthgwyn Githgo Gerithwyn Dropith Clantisilio Go Go Goch. It went so well.
What was that again?
Oh. I don't think I can repeat it again.
No, it was very good, very good.
Right. Linda, we'd like you to take that subject. So can you talk for 60 seconds on Clanfiar Pwthgwyn Gwith Gogegerith Windropith Clantisilio Go Go Goch? Starting now.
Clanfiar PG, as it's known to people like myself who are very intimate with that charming spot, is a delightful place and demonstrates the danger of giving a sign writer too much time and too many dangerous drugs, because they end up with a word that's basically a lot of Scrabble tiles thrown into any order you might care to mention and then painted up as a sign. I do not believe this. This is the most extreme example of Welsh people having a laugh at the English expense. There is no no such place, I am quite sure. And if there is, I'm sure people think...
Oh, Clement challenge.
Repetition, sure.
Yes, you were too sure then, I'm afraid.
Too sure.
So, Clement, you have 21 seconds available. The subject is Clanviareth, Pwithwingith, Gulgarith, Windrop, Clanticilio, Gogogoch. And you start now.
When I learned semaphore, somebody said, "Where are you?" And it was no trouble at all for me to signal that I was in...
Paul, you challenged.
Well, it was semaphore.
It was semaphore, yes.
But it was also hesitation.
It was hesitation. And, Paul, you have a subject, you have 8 seconds, you have this town in Wales, which I don't wish to repeat again, and you start now.
You don't wish to repeat it, but 8 seconds is really not long enough to say it. But here goes. I'm going to take a deep breath and have a really good run at it.
So Paul Merton was again speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and has increased his lead over all the others at the end of the round. Graham Norton, will you take the next round? The subject is my nickname. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I can't help but think that my family, friends, and work colleagues couldn't have tried a little harder and come up with a better nickname than, "Oh, it's you." It seems not the warmest, cuddliest little nickname they could have. My mother did call me Buster as a child. Luckily, it was the same name as our dog, so she didn't get confused at any time. Some dinners tasted a bit funny, but I was young. I didn't know. Later on, I was nicknamed something else. If only I could think of it now. Oh, it seems to have disappeared from my head. Nickname, perhaps, was the nickname. No, it wasn't that. Give me a minute. I'm sure I will recall it. I remember well in school...
Clement Freud challenge.
He's remembered before.
You did say yes. You remember before. And you went for 50 seconds. Oh, yes.
Don't patronize me.
That's the curse of this game. You go so well, and you don't get any points for it. Clement got in with 10 seconds to go on my nickname, starting now.
My nickname was Lancer Pulschwing Goggery Ron Gogogoch. And I answered to that to anyone who tried to...
So Clement Freud got points in that round, including one for speaking as the whistle went, and is now moved into second place behind Paul Merton. And Paul, your turn to begin. The subject, eating like a horse. Paul, take the subject, and 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Well, eating like a horse, I suppose, is something that you could do. Hay is something that horses like eating, and oats.
Graham challenge.
Slight hesitation.
Yes.
I invented a new word there.
Yes. Graham, you have eating like a horse, and you have 53 seconds starting now.
My father first taught me to eat like a horse when the lawnmower broke. I would have my hands on the lawn. He would hold my legs and push me, sort of like wheelbarrow, down the garden. The grass was delicious. No complaints there.
Linda challenge.
Delightful, Graham, but a repetition of grass.
Yeah.
Did I not say lawn?
You said lawn.
You did say grass, yes.
Yeah, no, I did.
Linda, we're going to hear from you on the subject. Eating like a horse. 36 seconds starting now.
Eating like a horse means to eat heartily. My Uncle Roy always says, "Oh, I eat like a bird." Unfortunately, it's a gannet, actually. And it's fooling nobody. Eating like a horse would be quite a dreary diet, and also I don't think I'd like to have that rather rough nose bag over your face. I think that would itch, especially as I have sensitive skin, which requires a lot of skin care, costing about $500.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of skin.
You had too much skin there, I'm afraid. Yes. So, Clement, you've got in with another point to you, of course, and eating like a horse is still the subject, and there are 12 seconds starting now.
Bria Savarin wrote, "O children of Eden, who gave it all away for an apple, what might you not have done for a turkey stuffed with sweet chestnut?"
Paul Merton challenge.
Well, this isn't eating like a horse, is it?
Coming up to it.
Oh, I see.
Coming up. Well, you went for 11 seconds and you never get to it. So I think in just a minute you do have to establish what the subject on the card much sooner than that, because otherwise,
So
So
Nicholas, horses do like apples.
But he hadn't got to that point.
No, he mentioned an apple.
He mentioned an apple, but he hadn't related the apple to the horse. So I agree with Paul. So, Paul, you have 1 second on eating like a horse, starting now.
I once entered a horse.
So Paul Merton spoke as a whistle and gained an extra point, increased his lead over Clement Freud. Linda Smith and Graham Norton are equal in third place, and Linda begins the next round. Linda, the best film ever made. Tell us something about that in just a minute, starting now.
The best film ever made. There are so many to choose from. Could it be Casablanca or Seven Samurai, The Godfather, or possibly the film that followed that and was called The Mafia Boss 2, but not in so many words, of course. It might be Citizen Kane. It might be a film by Fellini.
A Clement Freud challenge.
2 might be's.
It might be. It might be, yes, it might be. Right, 40 seconds, Clement. The best film ever made, starting now.
I think, in my opinion, the best film ever made was 12 Angry Men. It is one which I go and see over and again. A wonderful 12...
Graham Norton. Yes, Graham.
I feel horrible now. A repetition of 12.
Yes, he had the 12 again. 29 seconds. You tell us something about the best film ever made, starting now.
I believe the best film ever made was E.T., the Extraterrestrial. It is a superb movie. And I remember my disappointment the year it didn't win Best Oscar. No, that went to...
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
What?
No such thing as Best Oscar.
No, in fairness, you're right.
Well, just a minute. Now, let's be fair to Graham here. He didn't win the Oscar for the best film, but you could say that is the best Oscar to win, couldn't you? And you have 15 seconds to continue on the best film ever made, starting now.
The best film ever made was, without doubt, Gandhi. Oh, the costume.
Paul Merton challenge.
Well, that's the deviation.
Why?
Because he said it was E.T.
He
changed his mind. Changed his mind.
No, I think that's a fair challenge. Paul, you have it.
It's a world turned upside down.
You just said the best film ever made was E.T.
I was an idiot. What was I talking about? Childish, sentimental...
But you did not establish...
Gandhi, now there's a hard-hitting political film.
Right. You didn't say I've changed my mind, and in my opinion it is now the best film ever made. You made the statement, and now you contradicted the statement. So, 12 seconds, the best film ever made, starting now.
Undoubtedly, the best film ever made is Gandhi meets E.
Graham Norton challenge.
It went off in my hand.
In other words, your buzzer, accidentally your finger slipped on the buzzer. I think we should establish that. So you don't have an actual challenge. No. Paul was interrupted. He gets a point. He gets 8 seconds. The best film ever made, starting now.
It is very difficult to decide what you think is the best film ever made. Perhaps the question should be, what is your favourite film? Undoubtedly...
So Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point. He's now increased his lead ahead of Graham Norton. In fact, he's got 13, Graham's got 7, then there's Clement with 6, and Linda's got a few behind them. And,
What's a few behind 6?
4, 5, whichever you want. Graham,
yes.
It's your turn to begin. The subject is relatives. Tell us something about relatives, starting now.
Relatives are God's way of giving you flatmates. It's a random thing, really, because if I'd advertised for people to live with, I don't think I'd have accepted my mother and father. They're kind of old. They don't stay up very late. And, they complain about the noise. Mind you, the old woman, she's good at the cleaning. My father also helps in the garden. That was good, too. Oh, if I said good twice, baby, who cares?
Don't draw attention to it. Sometimes they're generous. Paul, you got in first. And there are 34 seconds on relatives, starting now.
As Graham says, it's very impossible to choose your own relatives, whereas friends are somebody that you can say, yes, I like you, I shall be friendly with you, and...
Linda.
I was trying to turn you into another word.
So Linda got in first, then. We call that hesitation, Linda, and you have 23 seconds on relatives, starting now.
I mainly see my relatives at family celebrations, such as funerals, which is very similar to Christmas without the paper hats. They're very similarly attired and sat around like crows on a fence and generally reducing us all to a state of mild depression that involves just over-the-counter drugs, nothing too serious. And I manage to endure it because I know...
So Linda was speaking as the whistle went. With other points in that round, she has leapt forward. She's still in fourth place, but she's only 1 point behind Clement Freud, only 2 points behind Graham Norton, and only 5 points behind Anita Paul Merton. And Paul, it's your turn to begin. Here's a good subject. Onomatopoeia. Yes.
Ooh, there's posh.
Yes. Talk about onomatopoeia in this game, if you can, starting now.
It means words that sound like the noise they describe, such as buzz, hiss, meow, zoological gardens. These are all examples of onomatopoeic words. It's one of...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of words.
Yes, that's right. You did say
Yes,
words.
I did.
You did, yes. 46 seconds, Clement. Tell us something about onomatopoeia, starting now.
Onomatopoeia is a small town in Anglesey, which hardly anyone is able to pronounce. You go to the station, and on the platform there's this sign, Onomatopoeia, go, go, go.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of go.
I'm glad you didn't challenge for anything else, because I don't know what I'd have interpreted it as. Anyway, 28 seconds, Paul. You have onomatopoeia back with you starting now.
I don't know if anybody finds onomatopoeia particularly useful in this day and age. Perhaps in the 19th century, people were wandering around London and other major cities in this marvellous British Isles of ours, using onomatopoeia at every conceivable juncture. Perhaps people walking in and out of shops would say...
Graham Norton challenge.
I felt like I was getting on a bus there. It was quite... Move on top. What was I going to say? Oh, I forgot now. Walking. Repetition of walking.
Yes, there was walking,
Yes.
right. So, Graham, well, listen, you've got him with 8 seconds to go on onomatopoeia starting now.
Until tonight, I always thought onomatopoeia was Welsh for tomato. But I know so much more than that.
So Graham Norton, with points in that round, including 1 for speaking as the whistle went, has leapt forward. He's now just behind our leader, Paul Merton, and then it's Clement Freud and Linda Smith. And Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is the peach. Tell us something about the peach in just a minute, starting now.
The peach is a fruit generally described as luscious, and if you go to Venice, Milan or Rome, Harry's Bar serves bellinis, which are the most sensational cocktails made of white peaches liquidized, mixed with brandy and champagne. I cannot recommend this peach confection enough. It is peachy to the extreme. Peaches jump out at you. Your taste buds are taken over by the taste of peach. A great, enormous, wonderful pink and white and yellow and...
Was there a slight hesitation there?
A slight one, but not enough to be...
enough.
Not enough, I don't think. I mean, he was struggling a little, but Clement, you had the benefit of the drought. You still have the benefit of the drought. That's right. And you have 21 seconds on the peach, starting now.
If you find women, sheep or goats attractive, you might say that is a peach, meaning beautiful, lovely, enticing, embraceable, peach-like. I can't recommend enough.
Graham Norton challenge.
Maybe not. What did you recommend? What did you recommend?
Yes, he had recommended. He was recommending the
Yes.
bellinis earlier on.
Yes.
And
Recommend and recommending, but there we are.
No.
I'm not sure you're right, Clement, but
And I'm
think...
sure you're wrong, Nicholas.
It was also, there was also repetition of white.
Absolutely. Because we're talking about the white peaches, too.
There was a...
There is a repetition. 5 seconds for you, Graham, on the peach, starting now.
An odd term endearment to the peach? Are you saying you have a problem with facial hair and a heart like a stone?
So Graham Norton was speaking on the peach as the whistle went and gained an extra point. He's now only 2 points behind Paul Merton, our leader, and just ahead of the other two. And Linda, your turn to begin. The subject, cold feet. Tell us something about cold feet in just a minute, starting now.
Cold feet is an expression that tends to mean going off an idea. For example, if I were asked to introduce Anne Robinson at an Eisteddfod, I think I would very rapidly get cold feet. Sometimes you can have cold feet because you are just cold. For example, if you're on a holiday in Snowdonia in August, you may find that your feet and the rest of you are very cold indeed, and also quite damp because it will be raining constantly, probably about 29 hours a day if that's possible, with a kind of intensity that you wouldn't think mere moisture could have. It has a most extraordinarily penetrating quality, I find, so your feet are definitely cold. If your feet are cold and the rest of you is very cold, then you may well be dead. This is a serious matter which you should attend to immediately. And
Linda, there must be something about the Welsh that inspires you, because you get a point for speaking as a whistle went, you get a bonus point for not being interrupted. I hate to have to tell you this, but you're still in fourth place. No, this is what's so unfair about this game, and I hate it because her contribution's so magnificent. But there we are. Graham Norton, it's your turn to begin. The subject is my previous incarnation. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
My previous incarnation was as my Aunt Irene, which was fine before I was born. But when we were both alive at the same time, it was hell. Particularly because I was quite small and fit none of her clothes. People began to notice. I could never be in the same room. Sometimes my mother would catch me in a cot, dressed as Aunt Irene.
Poor Thomas.
An unfortunate repetition of Aunt Irene.
Yes, Aunt Irene came in a bit too much. And Paul, you've got in with 42 seconds on my previous incarnation, starting now.
My previous incarnation was undoubtedly something spectacular in the Roman Empire or maybe in Egypt. It always seems to be that people who believe in reincarnation do see themselves as Cleopatra's handmaiden or plumber to Julius Caesar. Nobody says, well, I was a farmer in East Anglia in the 14th century reeking of cow dung and I died at the age of 36, because that's not very romantic, and maybe that's the feeling that we want to get back to, that there's something intrinsically romantic.
Clement Freud challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, we interpret that as hesitation. 13 seconds, Clement. Tell us something about my previous reincarnation, starting now.
In my previous reincarnation, I didn't write an autobiography.
Paul Merton challenge.
So why break the habit?
A bonus point for the comment, but have you any challenge? Well, you let him off the hook there because he did hesitate, actually. So he got a point for his interruption, which was very nice. Clement gets a point for being interrupted, keeps the subject, my previous incarnation, starting now.
I was, in fact, an East Anglian farmer, reeking of cow dung.
Right, Clement Freud speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he has moved forward. He's now 1 point behind Graham Norton, and Graham Norton is 4 points behind Paul Merton, who's in the lead, and Linda Smith is rushing up the rear, and we're moving into the last round. That's why I gave you such a precise comments on the state of play, because this is the last subject, and it's a very apt last subject for this show coming from Cardiff. It is the Welsh language. And Paul, it's your turn to begin. Tell us something about the Welsh language in 60 seconds, starting now.
I'm not very good with languages. I still struggle with English at times. I can't make it do what I want it. And Welsh is very impossible to understand, isn't it, if you don't have any learning or schooling in the subject? It doesn't make sense. The words don't bear any pronunciation similarity to what I'm... I told you about I was no good at English, didn't I?
Well, this was Welsh we were asking you to talk about. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Linda, you challenge first.
Yeah, a deviation from 2 languages there.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
I can be pig ignorant in any language you like.
42 seconds available, Linda, for you. The Welsh language starting now.
The Welsh language has some omissions in its words. There are some concepts that do not have a thing to denote them.
Graham challenged.
It seemed like a hesitation.
It was a hesitation.
Yes.
Right,
Oh.
Graham. So you tell us something about the Welsh language in 34 seconds starting now.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I'm sitting here in the fastest growing capital city in Europe. But I'm very drawn to the Welsh language. You know, I speak a little. I think if I try, I can say industrial estate in...
Linda, you challenged.
Oh, it's about half a dozen eyes.
It is the Welsh language.
So you're having him
It's a
for repeating
festival
I.
vowel.
Well, I must...
No, fine.
No?
No, fine.
Well, I don't want to make a big thing out of it.
No, it's fine.
No, but I mean, I have to be fair within the rules of just a minute. He did repeat I. And within the rules of just a minute, that's repetition. So you have the Welsh language. You have 20 seconds starting now.
When you listen to people using the Welsh language, quite often they'll come across a concept that doesn't have a word in Welsh. For example, English bastards. I've noticed when you're sitting in a pub somewhere, I can't help feeling with the complexity and difficulty of the Welsh language that possibly it is entirely fictitious.
So Linda Smith, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point and has surged forward at the end of that final round. She got points as well, and she finished up just in 4th place, only 1 point behind. No, but her contribution is so deeply appreciated. Only 1 point behind Clement Freud, and he was only 2 points behind Graham Norton. And they're all very, very close, aren't they? And he was only 2 points behind our leader, Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, you are the winner this week. So it only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 intrepid and stalwart players of the game, Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Linda Smith, and Clement Freud. I also thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score and blowing her whistle so delicately. And also we are grateful to our producer-director, that is Claire Jones. We are deeply indebted to the creator of this game, Ian Messiter, and we are more than indebted to this lovely audience here at the New Theatre in Cardiff, who cheered us on our way with Welsh passion and aplomb. From them... From our audience, from our panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, thank you for tuning in. Be with us the next time we play Just a Minute. Until then, from all of us here, goodbye. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country but throughout the world, but also to welcome the 4 dynamic and diverse personalities who are going to play Just a Minute this week. With pleasure, we welcome back that clever, witty, and man who plays the show with such humorous panache, Paul Merton. We also welcome back, after a bit of an absence, actually, someone who's equally clever and witty playing the game, that is Stephen Fry, and someone who plays the game with wonderful feminine charm and verve, and that is Liza Tarbuck, and someone who's been playing the game with incredible skill for more years than we care to remember, that is Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? As usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute comes from the Radio Theatre in the heart of Broadcasting House in the West 1 district of London. And we have a truly cosmopolitan audience in front of us, excited and ready for us to get going. So let us start the show with Paul Merton. And Paul, the subject in front of me is crow's feet. Will you tell us something about crow's feet? In just a minute, if you can, starting now.
Well, crow's feet, I suppose, aren't as useful to the crow as crow's wings. We tend to measure distances by how far the crow flies rather than how far is the repetition.
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition.
Repetition of how far. Yes, Clement, you have a point for that because you have a correct challenge. You take over the subject. It's crow's feet, and there are 49 seconds available, starting now.
To many people, crow's feet will mean a referral to Sebastian W. Crow, who swam 80 metres underwater in the swimming pool of Totnes in Devon. Crow's feet is remembered...
Stephen Fry, you challenged.
Yes, I doubt that. I doubt many people.
Yes,
Some, it's possible.
I doubt it.
Some
as well.
of the
trouble
small
is, you've been
cast
very
of
clever here.
phantasms that
None
inhabit...
of us can prove it, can we? It could have been that this did happen.
Let's phone him
We could
up.
prove it with a fight.
So you want him for deviation, do you?
Well, vaguely I want him for deviation, yes, but that's a separate issue, I suppose.
I've got a very fair way of handling this one. Give Stephen a bonus point for that wonderful remark of his. And Clement, we can't prove that Clement's not speaking the truth, so we have to go with you, Clement, on this one. And you get a point for an incorrect challenge. You keep going on crow's feet, 34 seconds, starting now.
Crow drowned.
Stephen, you challenged.
Well, that pause must count as hesitation.
It's more than hesitation. It's a definite hesitation. So you have another point, Stephen, for a correct challenge this time, and you take over the subject of crow's feet. 31 seconds available, starting now.
Rather a dashing feature of people as they age, I suppose. Paul Newman has splendid crow's feet. Those little slits that come from the edge of the eyes. Rather noticeable, of course, if you're in a soot explosion or something similar and blink, then those white striations appear, apparently causing some pleasure to women who enjoy that kind of man, rather like the flash of white on the sideburns at Seward Granger.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of like.
Yes.
Oh, good
Yes.
point. Well
Yes.
spotted.
Well
It's
spotted,
good, isn't it?
Yes, right. You've been playing the game for quite a while, and spots things. Right, 17, no, there's 11 seconds only available for you, Clement, having got another point for a correct challenge, to go on with crow's feet, starting now.
If you see a crow flying towards you, its feet are always the first thing that touch the ground. Not the knees, nor the elbows, seldom the wings.
Paul challenged.
Do crows have elbows? I don't think they do they?
No. So, Paul, you have a correct challenge, and you've got him with half a second to go on crow's feet, starting now.
Crow's feet.
So, in this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Paul Merton. So, at the end of that round, he has... he's equal with Clement Freud, actually. Stephen, will you take the next round?
All right.
And the subject is... Oh, this is a good one for you, because you've written about it with great style. My school days.
Oh, Lord.
Tell us something about my school days in just a minute, starting now.
My school days were a source of unimaginable pain, despair and disappointment for those who taught me. For myself, they were unmeasured bliss from start to finish. I was a wretched child, misbehaved at every possible point and turn. I was expelled from more schools than many of us could name, and for good reason. I was a shocker. Horrible, nasty, unpleasant, vicious, lying, duplicitous.
I've never heard anybody put himself down so much. The audience were in shock. This man we love and admire makes
I
us
don't know.
laugh. Oh, well, anyway, Paul, your challenge.
It was hesitation.
Hesitation,
He ran
yes.
out of bad things to say.
So you have the subject of my school days, and there are 37 seconds starting now.
My school days, difficult really. I went to several different schools. The first one I remember quite clearly was a nursery school in Fulham, and there was one particular incident, one lunchtime.
Lisa, you've
I
challenged.
got him with a bit of repetition there,
You
didn't
did
I?
get him with repetition. You have a point, Lisa. You have 27 seconds. Tell us something about my school days, starting now.
My school days were wonderful. I enjoyed them from beginning to end. My favourite subjects would include things like art. I was particularly good at biology, funnily enough, and PE, which is physical education. I used to trot down to the games field for a...
Clement challenge.
Repetition of I used to.
I used to.
that'll be
I used
right.
to. Yes.
At least I've broken the ice.
Clement, another point and 12 seconds. My school days starting now.
My school days were varied.
Sometimes in this game, if they get the laugh, they're satisfied. And track it in. And Lisa, you came in first. Hesitation. 10 more seconds on my school days, please, starting now.
I remember the lax field, otherwise known as lacrosse.
Stephen.
I was second field. We dropped down to the games field.
You went down to the games field before. Yes, indeed. Well, listen, Claire. Stephen, 7 seconds available. My school days starting now.
My school days straddled the period from round about 1960 to 1970. Bugger too. All one word.
Clement, right. You challenge. What was it for?
Repetition.
Repetition,
all
yes.
one word. 1960, 1972, all one word, surely. No, it isn't. You're right, damn it.
No.
Okay.
It appears in writing like that, but we're dealing in the world of sound, so we go by what you say. My school days, 3 seconds, Clement, starting now.
My autobiography called Freud Ego.
A very subdued laugh when you mentioned your autobiography, I thought, Clement. But you were speaking as the whistle went, so you gained an extra point, and you're now in the lead at the end of that round. Liza Tarbuck, would you take the next round? The subject is snobs. Tell us something about snobs in just a minute, starting now.
A snob is a person who believes they are of higher social standing than some other people. Therefore, they may be rather condescending to those types. Famous snobs for me would include Captain Mannering of Dad's Army fame.
Oh dear. Paul.
Sort of hesitation over fame.
We call that hesitation, yes. You have snobs now, and you have 44 seconds starting now.
Well, I don't know, really. I don't meet many snobs in life. I think we're all very much the same. Look at Clement. Who would see him now and think that he lost his virginity in Russell Square? Unlike most of us, it was in the open air rather than in the facility of a warm bed, but he wasn't caring about this at the time. In fact, he mentions it in his autobiography. It's called Freud Ego. He's particularly happy for me to mention...
Stephen Fry, chance.
You did say Clement Freud and then Freud Ego. So
yes, right, yes.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Yes. 23 seconds. Stephen, you have snobs starting now.
Of course, there's inverted snobbery as well, isn't there? Nobody likes the kind of snob who thinks just because someone wears a cravat and a blazer they're a gibbering idiot, otherwise people would dislike Nicholas Parsons. And that wouldn't be fair. So there are various kinds, if you like, of snobism. Alan Bennett once called it an amiable vice when it looks upwards, and of course a vicious one when it's downwards that it regards. And I would agree with that.
Paul Chalmers.
Downwards it regards. there was a sort of... Stephen, I think, tried to bluff his way out of a sentence there.
I think he was. I think he
looks twice. That's what I was doing. Regards means looks, and so
I think he kept going with style and panache so that you wouldn't recognise that he was rather mangling the English language, which is unusual for Stephen. But yes, I call that a deviation from English as we understand it. Right.
Do you?
Yes. Okay. And so, benefit of the doubt to you, Paul. Only 1 second. He's not in again. 1 second to go, snobs, Paul, starting now.
Cravats, of course.
So Paul Merton speaking as the whistle went, gained the extra point, and he's now just ahead of Clement Freud at the end of that round. Right, Paul, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is the A to Z. So can you tell us something about the A to Z in just a minute, starting now?
The A to Z was invented in the 1930s by a woman called Mavis Drinkwater. It was an extraordinary invention because up to that point nobody else had thought of it. When in the 1920s, for example, people used to walk around, they'd leave their house, go about 5 minutes down the road.
Stephen Charles.
It's very late, but there was 1930s and then
Yes,
1920s, and
yes,
I
the
was picked
19s
up on
coming in
a similar
lot,
one.
yes,
So.
Lots of dates are coming in here. 45 seconds for you, Stephen. You tell us something about the A to Z, starting now.
And dear old Drinkwater's company, I think, is still in the Gray's Inn Road.
Paul Challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Well, it's not Mavis Drinkwater, I made that up.
And hence I said I think.
This is a new way to play the game.
I believe it.
It can't be Drinkwater's company.
Yeah,
I said I think. I mean, I didn't say it was. I said I think. I mean, I can't, you know.
I think you're struggling a little here, Stephen.
How so?
I think he cleverly played the game a different way. He created a fiction, and you took up the fiction as if.
But if I'd challenged him on it, you would have said he was right because you couldn't prove it, which is
As
what
I did with
happened earlier. Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
So you're deeply inconsistent, if I may say so. That does you no credit at all.
And you're consistently clever. And it's always a challenge.
Oh, no. Just striving for fairness.
So,
nothing more.
where were we? Who challenged who? I've forgotten now. Yes, you did. So you have the subject back. 43 seconds. The A to Z starting now.
Of course it came from the marvellous brain of Hilda Biscuit. What a wonderful...
Stephen, you challenge.
I want to give you advance warning that if I win the next challenge, I will mention Hilda Biscuit, and if he says he's made her up, I want you to accept that she exists.
Well, I don't believe it. So
I don't believe
have
there
the
is such a
benefit of the
woman as
doubt,
Hilda
so
Biscuit.
it's evenly balanced. You
Yep.
see how fair I always am. So on this one, you have the correct challenge. You have 38...
Well, no, it really was Hilda Biscuit.
We happen to know...
Well, I don't believe it was Hilda Biscuit.
No, I threw you. See, no, it's only because I threw you off the centre of Mavis Drinkwater. Hilda Biscuit, you actually look it up. You
No,
look in
I
front of
was-
any A to Z and it says a product of the biscuit company.
I went with you on Mavis Drinkwater, but Hilda Biscuit, that one takes the biscuit as far as I'm concerned. Right. 38 seconds. The A to Z with you, Stephen, starting now.
It may well have been Dorothy Parker who said of... oh, dear.
Clement, yes.
Hesitate.
Yes, 35 seconds. The A to Z, Clement, starting now.
It was actually a woman called Phyllis Pearsall, and she owned...
Paul, you
You
challenge.
don't expect us to believe that.
All right, I've got to be consistent here. Yes, Paul, you get the benefit of the doubt. 29 seconds. The A to Z starting now.
It's a remarkable read. The characters aren't particularly lifelike, but the places seem so real. You can go all the way from Clapham Junction down to Brixton and across to the Oval, and then, if you fancy, you can follow the road through Kennington. This will take you to Waterloo. This kind of part of London is very nice because I like it very much. It's where Charlie...
Liza challenge.
Two berries.
Two berries. Well,
Well, I became about 7 years old, didn't I? I like it very much.
It's nice.
Lisa, you've got in with 8 seconds to go on the subject of the A to Z, and you start now.
I find the A to Z invaluable because I've never done the knowledge which well-known London cabbies who bore the neck off...
Paul challenge.
Well-known London cabbies.
Yes.
I don't think there
Housegate.
are... Well, that's one.
Well, some.
I always like Fred House.
I don't think there are well-known London cabbies.
Well, it could be London cabbies who are well-known, and I just got the punctuation wrong vocally.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There's a lot of spunk to this girl.
No, you have the audience on your side when you have the chairman on your side. I quite agree, and I believe there are a lot of well-known London cabbies. There's not only Fred Housegate, but
People hail a cab and they say, "Oh, good, it's Robert Watson." He'll see us safely home.
Lisa,
Good
an
point.
incorrect challenge. You have 2 seconds to tell us more about the A to Z, starting now.
The beautiful journeys that one can take.
So Lisa Tarbuck was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and has leapt forward. She's still in 4th place, but she has leapt. But she's not very far behind Clement Freud, who's just behind Stephen Fry, just behind Paul Merton, in that order. And Stephen, your turn to begin. The subject, going to the Optician. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
This is something in melancholy to relate that I have to do more and more often these days. Bugger, I said
yes.
more twice.
Yes, you...
It's a trap for the unwary, this game, isn't it? Yeah, me.
Yes, particularly with the language. Who challenged? I don't know.
I did.
You did, Clement. What was your challenge?
He said bugger twice.
But not in this round. Was that a serious challenge then?
More and more.
More and more. Right, OK, Clement. 56 seconds. Going to the Optician, starting now.
You hail a well-known cab and ask for any good optician, and the great difficulty is that if you go to an optician, you're likely to miss the place where he lives by virtue of your sight.
Paul challenge.
Well, probably more likely the place where he works rather than where he lives, because opticians don't live in their shop. You look at me as if I'm talking nonsense. You know the famous opticians of London, they don't live in their shops.
Mr. Dipple and Mr. Conway do.
Right, you have the correct challenge, Paul, and 44 seconds going to the Optician, starting now.
And if you keep on doing it, you'll go blind. That was a marvellous piece of advice that was given to me on my 18th birthday. So I went to see an optician's and they said, well, you need glasses. I said, well, that's why I've come to see you. He said, well, that's lucky because...
Stephen
I went to
challenge.
see him twice.
You went to see him twice.
Well, I had to do both eyes. It's a false economy otherwise.
I'm giving out bonus points. He gets one for that. You get a round of applause from the audience, right? And but Stephen got a point for a correct challenge. 34 seconds, Stephen. Going to the Optician, starting now.
A mild astigmatism is what I was first prescribed as having, and myopia in the right eye. It's now developed into presbyopia, which is Greek course for...
Clement, challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was a hesitation,
wasn't
yes.
there? Yeah.
Yes. You were searching for the Greek, I think, but 26 seconds.
Which of us is...
Well, now, please.
Going to the optician, Clement, starting now.
The extraordinary thing about going to opticians is they won't see you unless you have glasses or some other...
Liza, challenge.
It was a bit of a hesitation.
It was a bit of a hesitation. Lisa, you got him with 20 seconds ago. Going to the optician, starting now.
I went to the opticians when I was a young girl, as I was hard, and I was beginning to get a funny turn in my eye. So Mum took me down to an ophthalmic opticians, who prescribed to me...
Stephen, challenge.
Well, who prescribed him? It's rather mean of me.
right.
I'm sorry. You're right to hiss. Hiss off. Yes.
You haven't won many friends with that challenge.
No, I'm sorry. It was cruel. Right. But then that's patronising them to treat her as if she's made of glass.
Correct.
She's strong as we are, you know.
Maybe I like it.
It was a correct challenge, Stephen. So 7 seconds. Tell us more about going to the optician, starting now.
Can't get on with contact lenses. Not at all. Tried them for about 2 weeks. Made me itch. Caused my lacrimal ducts to swell and expand.
So Stephen Fry, with 1 point when the whistle went, but also other points in the round, has moved forward, and he's now 1 ahead of Paul Merton, and he's 3 ahead of Clement Freud, and he's 1 or 2 ahead of Liza Tarbuck. And Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject is that sinking feeling. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
As the Titanic left Southampton, there's a film actually made by Bill Forsyth called That Sinking Feeling. It was made in the 1970s, and it's quite a good movie. It's all made on a very low budget, and it's about a gang of Glaswegian youngsters who disguise themselves as various objects. I don't know what I'm talking about. The Titanic, which I've mentioned twice. I shouldn't have said that out loud, should I?
Stephen, challenge.
Well, I would have thought that a self-confessed person not knowing what he was talking about was almost certainly deviated.
Yes, that's right, yes. 43 seconds for you, Stephen, that sinking feeling starting now.
Though really, he did know what he was talking about, because that sinking feeling was the one that preceded Gregory's Girl, and in Bill Forsyth's canon it's considered...
Clement, challenge.
I thought Bill Forsyth because...
No, he said Forsyth.
You knew you'd heard the name before.
Exactly right. Yep.
But it came out of a different mouth and a different person.
Yep.
Yes.
Quite right.
And he's facing you, and the other one's sitting beside you. And
thank you.
Very easy to make a mistake like that. Yes. 37 seconds, an incorrect challenge, Stephen. So you keep that sinking feeling starting now.
In this game, as a way, as you start optimistically and youthfully off on a sentence, you develop that sinking feeling as the end approaches, and you wonder how on earth you're going to round it off in some semblance of sense. It doesn't often happen. Sometimes it does. And when that occurs, of course, you're very pleased. But that sinking feeling always tells you that at some point you're going to collapse in a giggle of words and a fart of nonsense, which is just about happening to me now as I feel that sinking feeling coming upon me, and I know that I'm not going to get properly to the end of this assemblage of words.
Clement, you challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Yes, he was going to get to the end.
But I didn't, because you interrupted.
That is an impossible challenge on which to make a decision.
I was waiting for the fart of nonsense.
I thought he illustrated that quite well, actually. But so he was going to get to the end. That is your challenge.
But I didn't, because he interrupted me, so he proved himself wrong by interrupting me.
So it's an impossible decision. The only thing I can do on this occasion is a thing I do about once in every series.
Oh, no, don't do that. Oh, you mean ask the audience?
Yes.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, don't do that. Sorry. I thought you meant the other thing. Oh, right. Sure.
Stephen, you mustn't give too much of my private life away,
sorry.
please. And especially the way you say it gives them all kinds of imagination about they've gone... What I do is ask the audience to be the superior judge, and with the wisdom I can see that's in this audience at the present moment, and the wit and the solid... Would you all decide whether Clement Freud deserves his challenge, and therefore you either cheer for the correct challenge and you boo for an incorrect challenge, and you all do it together now? I think the boos had it. So it was an incorrect challenge. So, Stephen, you have another point.
Very much.
And you have that sinking feeling.
I owe a lot to booze.
Yes,
good.
You've had time to gather your forces and your mental acumen together for another 9 seconds on that sinking feeling starting now.
That sinking feeling, something, of course, that golfers look very much forward to as they...
Clement Freud challenge.
He said, of course, before.
You did say
I
of
almost
course
certainly
before,
did. It's
yes.
the thing I say a lot.
Yes.
Sorry.
So, Clement, at last you've got your point, and you've got 7 seconds. That sinking feeling starting now.
If you putt a golf ball on, say, the 11th green at St Andrews, and it goes in...
So Clement Freud has moved forward. He's still in third place, but not far behind our joint leaders now, which is Stephen Fry and Paul Merton. And we're moving into the last round. Stephen, it's your turn to begin. And the subject, this is a good subject, Zeus.
Zeus.
Tell us something about Zeus in just a minute, starting now.
Well, it's interesting, actually, because Uranus and Gaia, who were warners and titans of the era before Zeus really reigned, they told Kronos that he would be subsumed and dethroned by his own child. And so he took to the habit...
Paul challenge.
Isn't this just gossip?
Give Paul another bonus point for that. But it's an incorrect challenge. No, Zeus was the son of Kronos. Yes, he really was. So you still have Zeus, and you have another point, and you have 43 seconds starting now.
So the aforementioned monstrous divinity from whom we get our Greek word for time took to the habit of eating all his children. Now, the mother, Rhea, who was pregnant with the baby Zeus, didn't like this idea at all, so she hid in Crete in a cave in Dicte and gave birth to the child.
Clement challenge.
We've had a child.
We
have
the
had
child came
children.
too often. So, Clement, you've gone in with 26 seconds. Tell us something about Zeus, starting now.
Zeus was the sort of Nicholas Parsons of his day, the god of gods.
Stephen's challenge.
Zeus was butch, he was all-knowing, he was...
I don't know why you clap. Oh, there we are. Stephen, you challenge it.
Yes.
Yes, and what is
the
it?
Deviation. He
What?
really couldn't have been further from Nicholas Parsons of his day. Because Zeus was arbitrary, he wasn't judicious, he was capricious, he was mean, he was unfair, he went to bed with little boys, I mean, all kinds of things. He was totally different from the Nicholas Parsons
Nicholas,
we know
it's
and
up
love.
to you. Are you like Zeus?
A thing we like to do is throw it open to Nicholas from time to time.
Shall we ask the
No, what
audience?
don't ask me. What I have to say is, in just a minute, I have on occasions to display Zeus-like qualities and be a god.
think so, yeah.
Yes, and make arbitrary decisions which you all have to accept, like
and
any
you
god
once
would.
went to bed with a swan, I think, as well, didn't you? On
Wasn't
just a
very
minute.
comfortable, I
No,
can tell you. But, they peck a lot.
Yeah.
So an incorrect challenge. Clement, you still have the subject. You have 20 seconds on Zeus starting now.
Mrs. Zeus, whose name was Hera, nagged him appallingly. He was
Stephen
Sorry, I
challenge.
thought there was a hesitation there.
There was a hesitation,
It was a bit
yes,
slow,
I
wasn't
think he was
it?
waiting for
between
you.
two words.
Oh, yes.
There was a hesitation, Stephen, so you've got the point anyway. 15 seconds. Zeus starting now.
The Romans called him Jupiter or Sky Father, and also Jove, from which we get our word jovial, a quality much possessed by...
Paul challenge.
Did we have father before?
Sky Father is all one word. It's Jupiter.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it is. A Sky Father. It's a sort of mythological word.
I'm
a Sky
nodding.
Father.
Like I know.
Jupiter. That's what Jupiter is.
Stephen.
Jupiter. Jupiter is early Latin from which Pater came, meaning father,
Yes.
and Jupiter is Sky Father. That's what it means. It's one word.
No, it was me who said that Kronos was...
I can't tell the difference between you and Zeus. I mean,
I used the word father, Stephen
Did
didn't
you?
actually, yes. 9 seconds on Zeus, still with you, Stephen, starting now.
He liked both girls and boys. Europa.
And Clement challenge.
We've had boys before.
You've had
A
boys.
boy we had, boy. Single boy. I accused you of not going to bed with boys earlier outside the
That's
actual
outside
round.
the thing you did.
But that wasn't during
you
a round.
only used the
Yeah.
boy singular
Yeah.
in the show, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Boys was outside the show. You had a boy in the show.
so, now hang on a minute. You go to bed with boys outside of the show.
And I'm Zeus-like in the show, but utterly un-Zeus-like outside. All right. And It's still with you, Stephen,
Right.
on the Zeus. It's 6 seconds starting now.
Ganymede, a very comely youth, or Ephebi, was actually promoted into heaven, and we get our name Catamite.
So it now remains for me to give you the final situation. Well, Liza, who gives wonderful value, and we love having on the show, finished just in 4th place. And she was a few points behind Clement Freud, who finished in 3rd place. He was only 4 points behind Paul Merton, who was in 2nd place, and he was a number of points behind Stephen Fry, because that one subject earlier on, he surged with such an incredible pace. He's got a commanding lead, and we say, Stephen, you are our winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 exciting players of the game, Paul Merton, Stephen Fry, Liza Tarbuck and Clement Freud. Also to thank Janet Staplehurst for helping me with the stopwatch and blowing her whistle so delicately when the 60 seconds was up. And also we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we thank our producer Claire Jones for trying to keep us in order, and we are grateful to this audience who've cheered us on our way magnificently. From them, from me, from the panel and me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye! Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you, hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure not only to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, but also to welcome the 4 highly talented and humorous performers who this week are going to play Just a Minute. It is with tremendous pleasure that we welcome back one of this country's finest comedians, that is Paul Merton. We welcome back a humorous lyricist, I should say, and also another fine comedy performer, Hesketh-Harvey. We welcome also, back after a long absence, that charming and clever comedienne, Linda Smith. And we welcome also someone who's never played the game before. So he's shaky at the present moment, but he is a talented comedy performer. That is Chris Neill. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? Thank you. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score, and she will blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the recently refurbished Theatre Royal in the cathedral city of Winchester. And we have... Yes... And you can hear that we have a fine, warm, receptive Hampshire audience ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Paul Merton. And Paul, the subject is poetic license. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
The early 19th century is often considered the golden age of poetry. There were so many poets around at the time, they had to be licensed by the government. Coleridge himself was only allowed 4 stanzas a month, whereas Wordsworth was lucky if he was permitted to dash off the odd limerick between August and October. It is the most extraordinary concept now, and people won't believe you if you tell them that there was a time when poetry was considered so enriching.
Chris Neill is challenged.
I didn't know that. I think it's rather reckless of me first time. His fingers slipped.
Very reckless, yes, carry on.
Was there a hesitation?
There was a hesitation, Chris. Yes, you're quite right. You just shouldn't have hesitated in your first challenge. You're in there.
Well, no, I wish I hadn't, because I've got anything to say.
Right, well, you've got your first point in just a minute. You've got the subject, it's poetic license. There are 29 seconds available, and you start now.
I think... Oh, yes.
Yes, Paul.
I don't know, I feel bad about this, really. We did start with
we did start with her. I think on this occasion, as it is the very first time he's ever played...
Mind.
No. It's the first time you've ever actually spoken on Just a Minute, so we do allow a newcomer 1 right at the beginning. But from now on, there's no mercy. Right. So we won't charge any points on that, and say that you have 28 seconds now on poetic license, starting now.
To call Ainsley Arrowtett...
Linda.
A bit of deviation.
Yes, deviation from English, yes. But I mean...
But normally we allow people who've never played the programme for at least half a dozen chances to get a sentence out.
I know. Well, what we'll have to do is give Paul a bonus point, because it was a correct challenge. Yes, that's right. You're right, Paul.
Yeah,
yes.
all right, I'm happy now.
Yes, you're happy now, yes. He gets a point because of a correct challenge. And Linda's gets a point for a correct challenge. And she now takes the subject with 26 seconds, poetic license, starting now.
I think that it's unfair that you should have to have a poetic license if you don't actually use poetry. I was dismayed to open the door the other night to a poetic license detector van man who said, "Have you got a poetic license?" I said, "Well, I don't really use the substance you refer to."
Kit challenge.
I'm sorry, we said use twice, didn't we, there? Oh, sorry, was that unsporting? Oh.
Kit, you've depressed them all now.
I'm sorry.
Isn't it funny that you get a correct challenge, which is a clever one, and they are depressed? They're resentful. They do take sides.
They do. It's bitter. It's bitter.
But take heart, Kit. They turn.
They turn.
They can be very fickle, a just-a-minute audience. Kit, you've got a correct challenge, so a point for that, and you have 8 seconds on poetic license starting now.
I believe that every time the poet laureate passes a motion, as it were, he has to forfeit his hogshead of Malmsey or his...
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Kit Hesketh-Harvey, and you won't be surprised to discover that he's in the lead at the end of the round. They've all got 1 point. Kit's got 2. So we carry on. Chris, Neill, would you take the next round?
Yes.
Right. You said, as if you shut your lips and we're going to speak again. I'm sorry. The subject is dating agencies. Chris, can you tell us something about those in just a minute, starting now?
We are told these days that dating agencies are not just for the sad and lonely in our society, but to be honest, it does help. I was invited many years ago when I'd been unceremoniously dumped to join a dating agency, and I looked around and I thought, the one I really like, what am I keen on in life? And it's food. So I thought, one where you're set up for dinner with somebody else of a similar bent, and you go out and enjoy each other's company and dine.
Linda, challenge.
Sorry, it does seem like shooting baby seals, I must admit, but there were several ands.
There were 4 or 5 ands, I'm afraid, yes.
I was hoping that wouldn't be included, the word
Well, they're often generous and
But
let
it isn't
one...
normally, but when you haven't played the game before...
All right. You see, they often let 1 or 2 ands go, but half a dozen is stretching a bit. So you've got the subject, Linda. You have another point, of course, for a correct challenge. 30 seconds are available. Dating agencies starting now.
Dating agencies. The phrase that I find a little alarming on a dating agency advert are when...
Chris, challenge.
Was that a slight sort of deviation of the word agency?
No, she was putting an apostrophe. She was trying to get an apostrophe onto agencies, and it sounds a bit like that, and I thought she did rather well, actually.
No, I did like it.
But, no, a bit too keen, I think,
Okay.
Chris.
Yes, very keen first time out.
Yes. So, an incorrect challenge, another point to Linda, 24 seconds, dating agencies starting now.
The initials GSOH. Possibly they mean good sense of humour, but I suspect they mean going slowly off head, which isn't that reassuring if you're going to meet someone with a view to friendship, possibly romance, possibly the idea that you just said possibly about 20 times.
2 possibilities.
2 possibilities, Paul. So you got in and you're going to tell us something about dating agencies, and there are 10 seconds available starting now.
I remember many years ago, I was travelling on a tube and I looked up and saw this advert in front of me. Said, "Are you sitting next to the new love in your life?" And I turned around and there was this Chinaman smoking a cigar. We lived together for about 4 or 5 years, but it didn't really work out.
So, Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point. He's now equal with Linda Smith in the lead, just ahead of Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Chris Neill. And Linda, your turn to begin. The subject is multitasking. Can you tell us something about multitasking? 60 seconds to go, starting now.
Multitasking is the term used to describe the ability to perform several tasks at the same time. I am very adept at multitasking. For example, I can watch telly whilst drinking a cup of tea at the same time, if only I smoked.
Chris, challenge.
I don't know why I'm being so keen. Was that a repetition of same time?
No.
I'd like to challenge the chairman, actually.
Yes,
Deviation, I'm sorry.
Well, listen, Chris. That's right. Yes, same time.
Kit can have it. I don't mind that.
No. 44 seconds. You tell us something about multitasking, starting now.
I was at a dinner party last week with a doctor who works in a North London hospital, and he was telling me about various elements of his job. And one thing, really, he doubles up as a lost property officer. You would not believe the things people lose inside their bodies. I can't speak anymore.
Linda, you got in first.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't really, because I was intrigued to know how that was going to end up. But
yes. So hesitation, 23 seconds, Linda. Multitasking starting now.
Another multitasking gift I have is to listen to Moneybox live and slip into a light coma at the same time. An ability that I believe I probably share with the vast majority of other listeners.
Sadly, a slip-on majority.
That's right, yes. Majority is not a word that we understand, and so we think it's a deviation from English as we understand it.
One day you may, Nicholas.
Right. Paul, you have 9 seconds once again. Was 10 before, it's 9 this time. Multitasking starting now.
I remember I was sitting on the tube and I suddenly saw this sign opposite...
Kit challenged.
He's still sitting on the tube.
I know, but that was a different
Was
round.
it a different one? I'm sorry. Carry on. It's a circle line,
You can recycle thoughts, material and so forth from one round to another, but you can't in the same round. So, incorrect challenge. Paul, another 0.7 seconds, multitasking starting now.
One of the great things that I love to do in life is performing on Just a Minute while consequently and also at the same time crushing grapes in a plastic
So Paul Merton speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point and with others in the round. He is now just ahead of Linda Smith. And Kit Hesketh-Harvey, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Pride and Prejudice. Tell us something about that in this game starting now.
It was written by somebody who came from Hampshire, actually, Jane Austen, and the story goes thus. It's 5 girls living in a house which has been entailed to a boring clergyman until Elizabeth meets Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, who leaves William and goes off with her. And they rapidly...
This is a very long book, isn't it?
It's very long. It's taken a devious turn already, I think. It's not the book.
It was a hesitation.
Hesitation, because he realised he'd deviated from what Jane Austen had written. Right, so, Paul, a correct challenge. Pride and Prejudice, 41 seconds, starting now.
It's one of those books that I've never read, but I often watch the television adaptations. There's been many versions over the years. Who can forget the one with Charles Hawtrey, Will Hay...
Kit Hesketh-Harvey
Hesitation, but it was very funny.
No, he didn't hesitate. He could have had him for something else, but I won't say it now. But no, he didn't actually hesitate. He kept going.
No, fine.
Through the laughter. Yes. 29 seconds. Still with you, Paul, on Pride and Prejudice, starting now.
I breed poodles for a living, and one of my favourite animals are Pride and Prejudice. I've named them after the Jane Austen novel because they are beautiful creatures. I go out into the morning, I shout through my window, Pride, Prejudice, and those little faces come running up towards me, followed by their bodies some way behind, as they lap at the back door, eager for their dog food, and I say to them, my charming creatures,
Kit challenged.
2 creatures?
Yes.
No, dogs.
There were dogs first, not creatures.
There were dogs first time.
No. What's that?
Yeah.
Linda thinks there were 2 creatures.
Right. What does the audience think? Were there more than...
Sorry.
There we are.
I was surprised anybody was listening, to be honest.
So, Kit, you've got in with creatures and 3 seconds on Pride and Prejudice starting now.
Till she sees him in wet...
Paul challenge.
Well, there was a bit of a hesitation there.
A good laugh, but no hesitation. 2.5 seconds on Pride and Prejudice, Kit, starting now.
In wet trousers and admires his magnificent seat.
So, Kit Hesketh-Harvey is moving forward there. He's now in second place behind Paul Merton. Linda Smith's 1 point behind him, and Chris Neill's 2 points behind them. And Paul, back with you to begin. The subject is what your name says about you. Moment to think about that one. It's slightly involved. So, talk on it for 60 seconds if you can, starting now.
Well, it can say a great many things. It can place you in time, class, age, sex, for example, Albert, as a name, is no longer popular, but it was at the turn of the last century. Nicholas Parsons' real name is Gladys Parson. And what a wonderful creature he is once he gets home, takes off this makeup that we see, and puts on a big sparkly dress. For many years, he's been wandering around the streets of London. Hello, dearie, want to be naughty with a little girl. And earns a fair amount of crust because, unfortunately, the BBC does not pay.
Kid challenged.
Repetition of Beeb.
I said BBC.
No, he said, very clever, he said BBC.
I'm sorry, well done.
No.
No.
I mean, actually, after what he said, I'd be very happy to give it away, but he didn't actually. No, he very cleverly said BBC.
BBC.
Yeah.
I just want to ask,
Yes.
just because I'm new to this, but does it matter that the BBC isn't anything as such?
Deviation
So
from...
is that a deviation?
It's a bit late now, isn't it?
No. Just it's quite cold in here and my mind's working slowly.
Yes, if you challenged for deviation, I would have given it.
Oh, right, okay.
But it's too late now.
Okay, no.
Yes,
It's
that's
slightly
right, yes.
retrospective, I know.
No, but you were clearing up an interesting point.
Thanks.
And, it put the audience... lull the audience into a slight sense of shock or coma, I don't know which, but... so, Paul, it's still with you on what your name says about you, starting now.
Kit Hesketh-Harvey could be the half-back line of West Ham United, or it could be the name of the gentleman sitting next to me. By those very words, we conjure up perhaps a man who didn't go to a comprehensive school. Nothing wrong with that. We can't all have the right start in life, but somehow he struggled to make it all the way to hear Winchester to play Just a Minute.
So Paul Merton started with the subject and finished with it, in spite of being interrupted at one particular point. And again, an extra point, of course, speaking as the whistle went. He's got a stronger lead. Why nobody challenged him for deviation when he talked about me being Gladys Parsons on the streets? I don't know.
How could we?
Oh, you believe it? Yes, oh, my goodness.
There were people out in the audience just nodding to each other. So...
Right, so we move on. Chris, Neill, your turn to begin. The subject is sulking. Tell us something about that boring subject in this game, starting now.
To be honest, Nicholas, I'm quite upset that I have been given that subject. It is not in my emotional range or repertoire to be a sulker, and in fact, I'm so upset I might not speak the rest of the minute.
Kid challenged.
Too upset, I'm afraid.
Too upset.
Now that shows how much I am.
Right, so Kit, you've got a point and you've got 48 seconds. You've got the subject of sulking starting now.
The big sulker at the moment is Peter Mandelson, who's sitting there like Achilles in his tent, refusing to come out, and all because Blair said to him, I don't want you anymore. Mandy, you came and you gave without taking, but I sent you away. Won't you kiss me? It's not even taking. So he's sitting in Hartlepool and saying, the bitch is back and the lady's not for turning on television in the middle of the night and frightening us all.
Linda, challenge.
Hesitation.
It was a hesitation. He got it off his chest, and that was it. Right, so Linda, you've got the subject of sulking. You have 27 seconds, starting now.
Sulking is something many of us do, particularly when we're teenagers. You've got a lot to sulk about. Suddenly you put on a lot of weight, all of it on your lower lip, it seems. You just walk around pouting the whole time. And you manage to put about 5 syllables into the word no if anyone asks you a question. You sort of go, I won't say it because that would then be repetition, and I'm not falling into that trap. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Kit, you challenged first.
Repetition of no.
No, yes. It's a tough game, isn't it? But isn't it fun? Kit, you've got in cleverly with 2 seconds to go on sulking, starting now.
Paul Merton, Aid Edmonton, Victoria Wood Green.
So Kit Hesketh-Harvey got the point for speaking as the whistle went and his move forward. He's 2 points behind our leader, Paul Merton, and he's 3 points ahead of Linda Smith, and he's 4 or 5 points ahead of Chris Neill. And Kit Hesketh-Harvey, your turn to begin. The subject is makeovers. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Somebody who's had a marvellous makeover recently is the Shadow Home Secretary. She used to be so like the back end of a horse, didn't she? But now she's Widdicombe fair with her lustrous peroxide teaseled glocks and...
Yes, Linda, you challenge first.
Saying he just choked on his own lies.
So we call that hesitation. Linda, you have makeovers. You have 47 seconds starting now.
Makeovers are a modern scourge to my way of thinking. I'm utterly sick of them on the television all the time. I bet somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, one of Bin Laden's many wives is nagging him saying, never mind international terror, when are you going to get that back bedroom in the cave made over? It's just...
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of cave.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well listened. 28 seconds for you, Paul, on makeovers starting now.
I remember seeing the first makeover about 15 years ago on television, and I thought, well, that was fairly dull. I don't suppose I'll ever see that again. And sure enough, they've been doing it ever since. It's the most amazingly dull thing. They get somebody...
Linda, challenge.
Two dolls.
Two dolls, I'm afraid, yes. 17 seconds, Linda. Makeover starting now.
They always get in that big ponce from changing rooms, the one who looks like Margaret Lockwood in The Wicked Lady. And
Chris, challenge.
Was that a hesitation?
There was a hesitation, Chris. Yes, she was... You're such a fickle audience. I don't know whether you're clapping Linda's last remark, which is very funny, or Chris, the fact he's got in. So, Chris, you've got makeovers in 7 seconds starting now.
I cannot think of anything finer than being given a voucher to go into a top London West End department store, have a lady clamber over me.
So Chris Neill gained points in that round, including one for speaking as the whistle went, and he has leapt forward, and he's still in 4th place. But no, he's not very far behind Kit Hesketh-Harvey. He's a few points behind Linda Smith, and even more behind Paul Merton, who's still in the lead. And Chris, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is Keats. Tell us something about Keats in just a minute, starting now.
I know why I've been asked this. It's because Keats was inspired to write his lovely Ode to Autumn, I've forgotten the words, when he was... Oh, I've hesitated.
Don't tell them! Keep going. They might ignore it. I certainly would ignore it.
Strike.
It's a preemptive strike. Unfortunately, you hesitated. We know that. Everybody did. And, Linda, you've got in first. And
well, I think it's what he wanted, really. It was a cry for help, really.
Yes. 45 seconds, Keats, starting now.
The railway stations sometimes put up poems by Miss
Kid challenged.
Poems.
Poems, yes. Abbreviation from English and probably...
Well, they're like little dried poems.
They sound like lavatorial poems to me. Anyway, you've got in, Kit, with 45 seconds on Keats starting now.
He was, along with Coleridge and Shelley and Wordsworth and Byron, one of the new romantics like Simon Le Bon and Adam Ant. And he wrote all sorts of...
Paul, challenge.
Well, there was quite a lot of ands.
There were quite a lot of bands, I'm afraid, yes. So, Paul, you've got in 36 seconds. Keats starting now.
I don't know anything about him.
Deviation. He's learnt a lot at this programme already, hasn't he?
Oh, what a clever challenge. You'd have had him for hesitation, but you haven't for that as well. Also, but only 1 point, I'm afraid. Oh, right. 35 seconds, Keats, starting now.
His death was very uncertain. They weren't quite sure whether it was
Paul...
Well, is he dead or not? I mean, if he isn't, it's a scandal, because they buried the poor devil.
So what is your challenge within the rules of
I want to know. I have admitted I know nothing about Keats. I don't know if he's alive or dead. Deviation.
No, I think he was using it grammatically. His death was a little uncertain. I think it means the circumstances of his death.
So well, that sort of thing could confuse a stupid person.
No. Paul, what I will do, to be fair and generous, they loved your interruption, so we give you a bonus point for that. But Kit gets a point because it was an incorrect challenge, and he continues on Keats with 32 seconds starting now.
Whether it was going to be consumption or not, TB or not TB, that is the question.
Paul, this time you have got in, Paul.
Repetition of TB.
How on earth did you spot it? The 28 seconds, Paul, on Keats, starting now.
Well, one of the controversial aspects of Keats' life is whether it's ended or not. People aren't so sure. They know he was born in 1774, but is he still actually breathing and walking around? Some people say he's got a hot dog stand outside Stamford Bridge, and you go there, Chelsea home games on a Saturday, and there he is selling these horrible bits of meat stuck in a bap saying, "Oh, I'm Keats, I used to write poems, you know." And people are amazed at the...
Kid challenge.
Lots of people in all that.
There were lots of people in all that, yes.
there?
Yes.
Oh,
It was a flood. It was a great wing
Great
of lyric,
idea, yes.
lyric
Everybody's terrified to
inspiration.
challenge you for deviation, but you've got in cleverly with 3 seconds
Oh,
to
have
go.
I? Oh,
Yes.
great.
On a repetition of Keats starting... Not a repetition of Keats, on repetition. The subject is Keats, starting now.
La belle dame sans merci. The bloody woman never says thank you.
Paul challenge, what's it?
I don't know what he's saying.
For a man who
Deviation
doesn't
from
know
English.
what he's saying, and then you, with great confidence, say when Keats was born in 1774.
I made that up.
I know you did, but nobody challenged you, did
No,
they?
because they didn't know either. They thought it sounds right, might have been.
That's the great bluff of just a minute. So what was your challenge this time?
I can't remember.
No, can I? Kit, another point, 2 seconds. Keats, starting now.
Loving Fanny as he did, which is extraordinary when you look at his portrait.
So Kit Hesketh-Harvey gaining a number of points in that round, including one for speaking as the whistle went. So we're moving into the last round, sad to say, and it is Linda's turn to begin. Linda, the subject now is my second language. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
My second language is non-existent because, like most English people, I know that if I speak loudly and clearly and fix Johnny Foreigner with an authoritative gaze, he'll understand all right. And if he doesn't, well, I think he's probably
Chris, challenge.
Well, there were quite a lot of he's.
There were.
Yes, a lot of he's. Well, listen, Chris. So you got in on 45 seconds to go on my second language, starting now.
My second language is that of romance. I have often been compared to Beppe from EastEnders. It's what with me, me Mediterranean look and me growly voice, I was going to say, but...
I've got to say, Chris, the trouble is you come up with these bombers and you love them so much yourself that you dry yourself up.
I know.
And you can't keep going.
I know.
You mustn't be such a good audience for your own jokes. So Linda challenged first, and you got in under the hesitation. My second language is back with you, Linda. 32 seconds to go, starting now.
My second language would probably have come along a lot better if I didn't go to such a rubbish school, the Quick Fit Comprehensive, in South East London, where our French teacher was a bit of a dozy old bat, to be frank, who would just make us colour in endless maps of France and little pictures of French markets.
Kit challenged.
French, twice.
Yeah.
I said France and France and French.
No, she said France.
No, a French teacher in French
French
markets.
teacher you
I'm
had.
sorry.
Kit, correct challenge. My second language, 12 seconds, starting now.
I happen to be completely bilingual, not in a public school sense as Paul Merton would had it, but gifted with tongues. And I would like now to tell you a joke which is of the not repeat that word variety. It is the French...
So, as I said, that was to be the last subject. We have no more time to play this delightful game. And just to let you know the final situation, Chris Neill finished up in fourth place, but only just marginally behind Linda Smith, who was in third place. But out in the lead, together equal, which seems a very fair situation, we have Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Paul Merton, our joint winners. Congratulations. Thank you. Well, we do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and it's my thanks to our wonderful players of the game, Paul Merton, Kit Hesketh-Harvey, Linda Smith, and Chris Neill, and I thank Janet Staplehurst for helping me with the score and blowing her whistle so beautifully and elegantly. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created the game that we enjoy playing, and also we thank our producer, Claire Jones, for keeping us in order as best she can and making sure it all goes out so smoothly. And we are very, very indebted to this delightful, very lovely, exciting, sexy audience here in the Theatre Royal of Winchester. From our audience, from our panel, from Nicholas Parsons, goodbye until next time we play Just a Minute.
And you can hear that again on Sunday at midday. And at 6:30 next Monday, Just a Minute will be coming from the White Rock Theatre in Hastings.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you, hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world to this program, but also to welcome onto the show this week 4 exciting, dynamic, and talented players of the game. We have that master of comedy, Paul Merton. We have that outrageous comedian, Graham Norton. We have that talented actress, Sheila Hancock. And we have that master humorist, Clement Freud. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. I'm, as usual, going to ask our 4 players of the game to speak on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the White Rock Theatre in that delightful coastal resort of Hastings. And we have an enthusiastic, hyped-up Hastings audience who've left their gardens and their fishing to come along here to cheer us on our way. And we'll begin the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, the subject is the magic of radio. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Well, it is a rather magical medium, radio. Ask Dr. Crippen. He was arrested after killing his wife because the invention by Marconi was used to contact the ship's captain. In fact, the good man was aboard a boat when it was radioed ahead and they...
Clement Freud challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Crippen was not a good man.
I think that's a very good and justified...
No, you know how people gossip.
I know you're using it colloquially, but I mean, I think, yes, I don't think he was a good man.
No, I was trying to avoid to say Dr. Crippen again.
I know. That's what's difficult about the show. But Clement got in with a correct challenge, so he gets a point for that, and he has 44 seconds to take over the subject of the magic of radio, starting now.
The magic of radio, I think, is that many years ago, before radio was invented, if you want...
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I think that was a hesitation, Sheila. Sure. They're going to be very partisan, this audience, aren't they? Yes. Sheila, welcome back, because you haven't been with us for a number of years, so it's lovely to have you again. Sorry, I mean, I'm talking about... I'm not bringing my private life into this. I'm just...
Memories.
Anyway, lovely to have you on the show again. The subject is the magic of radio. You've got in with 38 seconds to go, starting now.
I am.
Hesitation.
I knew you'd do that.
Yes,
I was dead on the buzzer, or whatever
Yes, dead on the buzzer. Yes, he did it deliberately just to wind you up. But, Sheila, you got another point, because that was an incorrect challenge, and you have the magic of radio still, and you have 37 seconds starting now.
It does always seem a miracle to me that here we are speaking into these black balls, and it goes through the air.
Graham Norton challenge.
Surely deviation. I don't know what people at home are thinking.
I know.
I think the listeners know there's always been a lot of balls in this show. You don't have to tell them, Nicholas.
I will not pursue this one any further. Say, Sheila, you have another point for an incorrect challenge, and you have 30 seconds to continue on the magic of radio, starting now.
And then, by some miracle, our voices...
Graham, you challenged again.
I feel badly now, but a repetition of miracle.
Yes, you did say the miracle of radio before.
Absolutely right.
Well, listen, Graham, you have the subject now. You have 27 seconds. The magic of radio, starting now.
The magic of radio is almost as good as the ventriloquist of radio. For if I was to say now, here is a hat, oh look, I've taken a rabbit from it, you would not be that thrilled. But at home, people listening are gasping with a mixture of astonishment and joy.
Paul, you challenge.
No, they're not. I don't think people at home would be gasping.
Well, they might be gasping, some of them. They might be apoplectic.
Well, some of them might be having heart attacks. I mean, we don't know.
But some of them might be overcome with joy and
they're running
pleasure.
downstairs to turn this off.
So, no, I disagree with the deviation. Graham, you have another point, and you have 12 seconds. The magic of radio starting now.
Sheila, pick a card, any one of these things in the deck. And I'll tell... Yes, it was the 6 of spades. Well done, Sheila.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Deviation, what's this got to do with the magic of radio?
I'm doing magic of radio.
People at home are gasping at this stuff.
Nicholas is loving it.
He's talking about magic on radio.
Asthmatics are reaching for the ventilator.
So, Sheila, I agree with you. You have a correct challenge. You have 5 seconds, the magic of radio starting now.
Take it from here, Itmar, round the horn, just a minute. Oh.
Whoever is speaking in this game when the whistle is blown gains an extra point on this occasion with Sheila Hancock, and you won't be surprised, in fact, having just returned after all those years, she's in fine form. She's got a strong lead over all the others. And Sheila, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is, how apt, the Battle of Hastings. You're still cheering. It was in 1066. Would you tell us something about that subject in this game, Sheila, starting now?
I have a terrible confession to make. I have actually cheated. Because listening to this programme, I realise that when you come to a town, you talk about the history. So I looked up the Battle of Hastings on the web last night, and I came across the most divine sight by somebody called Glenn Crack, who lives in Battle. It's absolutely beautiful about the Battle of Hastings, which happened in 1066, and now I know was between King Harold of England and William the Conqueror, both battling for the crown, and it took place on a hill whose name I can't remember, but it's 10 kilometres away from Hastings.
Clement, you challenge.
Repetition of 10.
Yes, you did use 10 before. 1066.
All right, I'll get you, Clement.
No, but
Still as nasty as he was 20 years ago. I bet you he'll come in at the last minute, too, and get a point.
Right, anyway, well, that was a justified one. Well, listen, Clement. 21 seconds. The Battle of Hastings with you, Clement, starting now.
The Battle of Hastings in 1066 was actually the last battle that we lost on our land some 950 years ago, and it wasn't in Hastings. It was in Senlac, which is some miles down the coast from here.
Clement Freud speaking as a whistle Wayne gained that extra point. He's moved forward. He's one behind our leader, Sheila Hancock, and then Graham Morton and Paul Merton in that order. Graham, will you take the next subject? Madame Tussaud, or, to use the common anglicised pronunciation, Madame Tussauds. Will you tell us something about that subject? Oh, it's wonderful she's chosen for you, isn't it? I can just guess what you might be saying. 60 seconds starting now.
I recently had the shock/honour of being told I was going to be in Madame Tussauds, presumably being made out of some leftover bits when they recreated Jerry Halliwell. But I found the thrill slightly tinged by the realization that ultimately there will be a day when they put a sack over me and carry me out and melt me down to be someone.
Sheila, you challenged.
Is there a lot of me's?
There were a lot of me's, yes.
It's a tiny word, Sheila. It's a tiny word.
We do try and resist the temptation.
All right.
No, but you...
don't patronize me.
No, but you have challenged, and it's a correct challenge, so we'll have to restrain yourself in future, but on this occasion, for correct challenge, you have the subject, Madame Tussauds, and 34 seconds starting now.
Well, she was obviously French, and I seem to remember a dreadful story about she used...
Paul Merton challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, Paul. Madame Tussauds is with you. Another point to you. 28 seconds starting now.
It's one of the most popular attractions in London. I can't think why, really, once you've been...
Graham Norton
I
challenge.
feel slighted and insulted. My mother has a season pass.
What we do on this occasion is, because we love the interruption, we give Graham a bonus point for what he said, because you enjoyed it so much. And Paul was interrupted, so he gets a point for that. He keeps the subject. 23 seconds. Madame Tussauds starting now.
Crowds of people queuing outside morning, noon and night. I really don't know why they bother, but now I realise that Graham's wax effigy is prominently figured. I expect to see those queues even lengthen.
Sheila Hancock.
Oh, Sorry.
What's that?
Crowds and queues.
Crowds and
Crowds,
queues.
yes, crowds and queues. You thought
Crowds
it was in
and
queues
queues,
before,
yeah.
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 You were talking about people, but in different
The old
formats.
crowd and queue trap you fell into there.
10 seconds, still with you. Another point to you, Paul. Madam Tussauds, starting now.
In 1968, they melted down Godzilla and Nicholas Parsons was put into the Chamber of Horrors. And what a remarkable sight it was. Tourists from all over the world.
Paul Merton speaking as the whistle went, and he's moved forward. He's only one behind our leader, Sheila Hancock. Sheila, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the 60s. Tell us something about that wonderful period in the last century, starting now.
Well, the 60s is a lovely age to be. I'm in my 60s, and I've never been happier, really, because people always say, "Good Lord, you look good," as though they expect you to be sagging, which I am, but I prop it all up and keep going. And also, I was young in the 60s, and I used to go around in my Courage boots and my Mary Quant mini skirt.
Paul Graham Norton challenge.
Repetition of mine.
I know.
Oh, right. Fair enough.
Yes, touche.
Fair
You
enough.
had him on the me's, he's got you on the my's.
Absolutely.
So it all works out evenly in the end, and I tried to... 31 seconds for you, Graham, on the 60s, starting now.
I was born in the swinging 60s, or as they were known in Ireland, the end of the world. Because, of course, before that decade, that country was a lovely place, a simple, gorgeous location of
Paul
a
Merton
thing.
challenge.
There was a tiny hesitation
There
there.
was, yes, he struggled
Yes,
over
there
that
was, yeah,
word.
there
We
was, yeah.
interpret that as hesitation. 14 seconds are available for the 60s with you, Paul, starting now.
As regards pop music, the 60s were undoubtedly the decade. So many bands came along that had huge hits, records were very popular. And here at the White Rock Theatre Hastings, tributes are often paid to those particular musicians of the day.
Well, Paul Merton, who at the beginning was in the 4th place, he's now moved forward with those extra points. And he's now in the lead, one ahead of Sheila Hancock, who's just 2 ahead of Graham Norton and Clement Freud in that order, so still very close. And Graham, your turn to begin. And the subject is how I get rid of the winter blues. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
I have a foolproof way of getting rid of the winter blues. Simply pop in a videotape of Lorraine Kelly's Jazzercise and slip into a lycra outfit, and oh, the fun you'll have.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Deviation. I mean, please. The thought of Graham in lycra on this video. Please.
It's in the privacy of my own home.
Now, the awful thing is, Sheila, he might actually do that for all we know. So how do I judge on that?
No, that's true.
It is difficult, isn't it?
It is
So, and let's give Graham the benefit of the doubt on this occasion and say we assume that occasions you do jump into a lycra uniform and listen to Lorraine Kelly. Graham, you have the benefit of the doubt, so you keep the subject, how I get rid of the winter blues. 45 seconds available, starting now.
How I get rid of the winter blues is to view Tracy Shaw's Salsa Aerobics. It's a superb workout, I can't tell you. And when you take off your gear, it's a bit damp with sweat, sprinkle watercress seeds on it, and there's an added fascination of growing a crop right there in your bathroom on discarded clothing. Your cleaner will see the funny side, I promise you, as you ask her to harvest it when you're going to work. I can't believe I'm still talking.
I enjoyed it so much, Graham, they let you talk on. Paul, you challenge first.
There was a hesitation.
There was a hesitation. 16 seconds, Paul. How I get rid of the winter blues, starting now.
Well, the best thing to do is to have a walk by the sea. Get all that ozone deep into your lungs. If that doesn't work, drink 4 bottles of vodka. And you won't necessarily get rid of the winter blues, but by the time you wake up, it will be spring. And as the flowers emerge, the daffodils...
Paul Merton was again speaking as the whistle went. Gained that extra point for doing so, has moved forward, increased his lead at the end of the round. Clement Freud, your turn to begin, and the subject is John Logie Baird. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
John Logie Baird was born in Scotland, Well, the name Logie was so frowned upon that he had to move to Hastings, where he invented television. Now, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, and the first one of its kind.
Graham Norton challenge.
Now, this might be controversial, but was the repetition of invented?
I did say he was the inventor of, but if you want to...
You're quite right, you did. He said he was the inventor of, and then he said invented.
I never said it.
Thank you for pointing that out, Clement. You keep the subject, an incorrect challenge. You get a point for that. You still have John Logie Baird, only in the subject sense, and the 41 seconds starting now.
I would have thought the important invention was the second telephone, because what on earth...
Paul challenge.
Repetition of telephone.
It was a telephone before, yes. So,
good
Paul,
gag.
you have the subject of John Logie Baird, and there are 34 seconds starting now.
Logie, what do you keep saying good gag for? Why do you keep saying good gag? Clement, sir?
Yes?
Clement keeps saying good gag to me, sir.
I know, and so that you'd stop talking, he presses buzzer and get in
That's
first,
right.
which is just what he's done.
It's not me, sir, it's Freud.
I think we're going to ignore all this and say, Paul, you have John Logie Baird and 32 seconds starting now.
Logie Baird, of course, was very popular in the 1960s, as indeed was his little bear friend, and they used to live in Jellystone Park. And they were always after picnic baskets, and the ranger would come round, and the little bear would say to his chum, two bears.
Graham
I remember his friend was called...
Yeah,
I remember his friend was called Boo Boo, but I didn't say that.
Right. So, Graham, a correct challenge. 20 seconds are still available. You tell us something about John Logie Baird starting now.
John Logie Baird's invention of the television was wonderful, because before that, the only entertainment was your wife sitting beside the serving hatch in the kitchen, reading the newspaper headlines out loud.
Sheila, you got in there. The ardent feminist couldn't...
Deviations. Sexism.
They can take it in turns. It'll be interesting. Who's reading the news tonight? Oh, it's my husband. Who's reading the news tonight? Oh, it's my wife.
It'll be a mother-in-law joke next.
Within the rules of just a minute, you were not actually deviating, so you keep the subject still, and you have 11 seconds. John Logie Baird starting now.
John Logie Baird had quite a dull day when he created his marvellous thing because there was nothing on. He'd failed to alert any television companies at all that program was...
Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went, got that extra point, and with others in the round, he's moved forward. He's now in second place, just behind Paul Merton, and he's just ahead of Sheila Hancock and Clement Freud. And Paul, your turn to begin. The subject now is... the most eccentric person I know. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Well, it's very difficult, really. How do you define eccentricity? If we look at Mr. Clement Freud, he has done so many...
Clement challenge.
Not Mr.
We had this once before on one of the shows last year. And...
What is it, then?
It is Sir.
I didn't know. Congratulations.
But, I mean, even if someone's Sir or Lord, you can still refer to them as Mr. if you wish to, colloquially speaking. 54 seconds are available for the most eccentric person I know, Paul, starting now.
On second thoughts, the most eccentric person I know is a man called Rob, who lives in Swansea. He's over the years been a performance artist, a sculptor, a painter, and he now makes his living making street furniture. This is the sort of thing where you walk around and you say, oh, look, there's a nice little sculpture, and he might well have constructed that. He used to walk round a shopping centre with a crash helmet and a daffodil sticking out of the corner. Very eccentric behaviour indeed, and people would come up to him and they would...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of people.
People, you had more people in the earlier one.
Right, yes.
So Clement's got in with 26 seconds to go. The most eccentric person I know, starting now.
I think His Royal Highness the Duke of Gloucester.
I will say, Freud does this on occasions. He comes up with a bon mot, he thinks that's good enough for them. Big laugh. I'll retire on that one.
Would that be Mr. Gloucester?
You could call him Mr. Gloucester. He may not be very happy about it. Sheila, you challenge first.
Well, he ground to a halt,
Yes.
didn't he? He ground to a halt. Now I'm dying to know why the Duke of Gloucester is eccentric.
If you hadn't buzzed, you'd know.
No, but you stopped. You stopped.
And that was hesitation, Sheila. So you have the subject of the most eccentric person I know starting now.
It's terribly difficult in our profession to choose eccentric people because we're all a bit round the twist. And I find people who work 9 to 5 and wear nice suits rather eccentric, actually. The living people, I find it difficult to define as this because they're still around, but I can name several. I've forgotten what agony this game is.
Extra loud laughter and applause was for Sheila was illustrating with hands and every part of her anatomy efforts to going under pressure not to hesitate or repeat anything.
Every part?
I can see her legs moving as well as her hands.
It's so easy when you listen to it, but it really is
I know,
difficult.
but that's the art that you display in order to make it sound so. But Sheila, you were speaking as a whistle winner with other points in the round. You're now equal with Graham Norton in second place, just behind our leader Paul Merton and just ahead of Clement Freud. And it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is My Pet Hate. Tell us something about that in this game starting now.
I'm going to get loads of letters, but things that I hate, pets, are dogs. I have a local park and they make the most awful mess. And the other day I was there with my grandchild and a blooming great Alsatian was nose to nose with her and the owner said...
Paul...
Repetition of nose.
Nose to nose.
Oh.
You had a correct challenge on nose to nose, Paul, so you've got My Pet Hate and you have 42 seconds starting now.
Undoubtedly, my pet hate is doing this show. It's the most extraordinary bind. I am, of course, joking. It's a wonderful thing to do. And my pet hate is when I'm not asked to do it often enough.
Clement Freud challenge.
Do it.
Do it. You repeated, do it.
Do it, sire.
Yes. Clement, you've got in with 29 seconds to tell us something about My Pet Hate starting now.
Most of my pets hate me. The gerbils, rabbits, cats, budgerigars. Goldfish is especially unkeen on me. You can speak to...
Sheila Chant.
No, it's a mistake. I was going to say me, but you can't have me, can you?
I think
They hate me.
I think a lot of people would love to respond to your laughter remark, actually, Sheila. But you did have him for me before. It's only fair you had Graham for me, so why shouldn't you have Clement for me? Yes.
Now, hang on a second. Why shouldn't Sheila have Clement for you? Is that what you said?
No, I said... It may have sounded like that. It may have sounded like that.
It must be the sea air.
No. The repetition of the word me.
Oh, I do beg your pardon.
No, that's all right. 16 seconds, My Pet Hate, Sheila, starting now.
Colloquially speaking, I hate cyclists. I loathe the way they go over traffic lights when they're red. Also, I'm very suspicious about the outfits they wear. Those middle-aged men in tight pants cycling around the street.
Sheila Hancock, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. And where is she now? You're doing well, Sheila.
Am I?
You might, yes, because I'm moving into the last round. And you move forward with all the points in that round. And you're equal with our leader now, Paul Merton.
Wow.
Yes. But I do have to... I do want to make one serious point before we go. I don't think you should hate cyclists, Sheila. I really think if more people got on their bicycles and got out of their cars, it would be a much happier world and a much safer world. That's from the heart.
Do you...
And a much healthier world as well.
What about ambulance drivers? How safe is that? 2 stretchers between 2 bikes? That's not very safe, is it?
They're in ambulances, not in cars.
So if we all buy ambulances, you'll be happy.
Oh,
How
buy
would
your
you know which
bicycles.
one's a real ambulance?
Get fit, get the fresh air, and stop polluting the atmosphere. You know me on my little hobby horse here, right?
Do you ride a bike?
I do ride a
Hobby
bike,
horse.
We're into the final round.
No.
Yes, we are. And Graham Norton, it's your turn to begin.
All right.
And the subject is sitcoms. Sitcom 60 seconds starting now.
People in the glamorous world of media are so busy, ladies and gentlemen, organising lunches, dashing hither-thither, they don't have time to say situation comedy. No, they barely have a second in their day to say sitcom. And people know what that means. That would be an amusing thing happening in a location, usually a kitchen or a doctor's waiting room. I've found in experience.
Sheila Hancock challenged.
It's sort of hesitation, isn't it?
It's sort of, yes, I don't know.
It's a long word. Foreign people listen to this program. I just want the...
He was dragging out his words, but he don't think he quite hesitated.
No,
Got
all right.
very teetering on the border of hesitation. So, Graham, you have the benefit of the doubt and 31 seconds on sitcoms starting now.
Sitcoms can be quite sexy. Who can forget the frisson twixt Terry and June? There was something about it. I don't know, those
So, Sheila, what was your challenge?
Well, it was hesitation, wasn't it?
Well, it was a mumble of words which stumble, which we interpret as hesitation. So, Sheila, you have 20 seconds. They're still available. The subject is sitcoms, and you start now.
Sitcoms usually last about half an hour and are very often done in front of an audience with 4 cameras, which they edit afterwards. I have done several in my time. Something called The Rag Trade, Bedsit Girl, Now Take My Wife, Mr. Digby Darling, all of which...
Paul, challenge you.
Well, we could all recite our credits. I mean...
So,
I mean, this is... well, I mean, you don't... well, OK.
what is... And Sheila still keeps the subject of sitcoms, and there are 3 seconds available starting now.
Nowadays, The Royal Family is one of the best sitcoms in the world.
Let me give you the final situation for those interesting points and scores. Right, Clement Freud and Graham Norton, who've triumphed admirably in the past before, have both finished together equal in 3rd place. They are 3 points behind Paul Merton, who often finishes up there in front, but somebody who hasn't played the game for, she says, nearly 20 years. I don't know if it's as many as that, but she's come back in triumph to triumph with her points 2 ahead of Paul Merton. Our winner this week, Sheila Hancock. It only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 exciting and delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Sheila Hancock and Clement Freud. I also thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score and blowing her whistle so delicately. We are grateful to Ian Messiter, who created this game for us, which we enjoy playing. And also we thank our producer, Claire Jones. And we're also grateful to this lovely audience here at the White Rock in Hastings, who've cheered us on our way. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from our panel, goodbye until the next time we take to the air and we play Just a Minute. Till then, goodbye.
And next week, Stephen Fry joins the roll call of contestants. That's at the same time next Sunday.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the Minute Waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, and also in this country, of course, but also to welcome the 4 exciting, dynamic, talented players of the game who've excelled in this show a number of times in the past. And in no particular order, would you please welcome Paul Merton, Stephen Fry, Liza Tarbuck, and Clement Freud. As usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow her whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Radio Theatre in Broadcasting House, which is situated in the heart of this great metropolis of London. So we'll start straight away with Clement Freud, and the subject is very apt for Just a Minute, blowing the whistle. 60 seconds, Clement, starting now.
Quite apart from Janet Staplehurst, who does blow the whistle brilliantly, referees at football matches tend to do this when there's a foul, hands, offside, a goal, or a throw-in. But politically and economically, blowing the whistle has come to mean snitching informing upon others. A foul, beastly thing.
Stephen, challenge.
Two fouls. Unfortunately, one adjectival, the other not. Yeah.
Yes, but it's
so good.
Radio right. So, Stephen, you have a correct challenge. You get a point for a correct challenge, and you take over the subject, which is blowing the whistle. There are 36 seconds available starting now.
Dobbing, I think they call it in Australia. Sneaking, snitching, as Clement so rightly said. It is not altogether a pleasant thing. Yet, on the other hand, when there are deep injustices perpetrated by large corporations, it seems to me perfectly legitimate that people who spot these oh dear.
Yes, oh dear.
This happens to me.
Yes, there was hesitation.
Yes. There was hesitation. You were going with such
I go too fast. I trip over my feet and I tumble downhill and appallingly.
You gather pace, actually. Your momentum trips you up.
It does, rather.
Paul, correct challenge. So you have the subject. You have blowing the whistle. You have 21 seconds starting now.
If you walk around Covent Garden, you'll often find street entertainers before...
Liza, challenge.
I had to get in there, didn't I?
Yes.
Hesitation.
Right, 15 seconds. Blowing the whistle with you, Liza, starting now.
Blowing a whistle can in actual fact be as good as going to see a brass band. If you get someone with the right round face and a lot of wind behind them, it can be a marvellous thing to watch, admire and listen to. Several birds I know like to gather up with their own whistles.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Liza Tarbuck. And at the end of that first round, she is in a very strong lead. You know you have the audience with you, Liza. And it's your turn to begin. The subject is chips. Tell us something about chips in this game, starting now.
Chips can be several things. They can be thin slices of potato, deep fried. They can be components inside...
Stephen, challenge.
Well, two they can be's. I mean, an individual word, perhaps, but when they're all together like that, it's pretty repetitious, isn't it?
Yes.
I feel dreadful.
Right.
Oh, no, I don't want you to feel dreadful. I want you to feel
just
super.
Sorry. I will feel super.
Good.
So, Stephen, correct challenge. A point for that. And you have 54 seconds on chips, starting now.
They always say the genius behind gambling was not the man who invented roulette, craps, poker. It was the fellow who came up with the idea of chips. That's what makes sport a pastime, or whatever you want to call it, of gaming so thrilling. The fact that the index of the money that you're actually peeing up against the wall is not real currency, but some symbol which you can play with. Gosh, that's exciting. I don't like potato chips, Nicholas. I'd be the first to say I find them pretty nasty, to be honest. French fries, pommes frites, allumette, call them what you will. I just don't find that they please my gullet one little bit. However, I've said
Yes, you can't use your normal mode of speech here, making huge emphasis. Paul, you got in. I can guess what your challenge might be.
Overemphasis.
Yes, how repetition. 16 seconds. Chips with you, Paul, starting now.
There's something about homemade chips that is absolutely delicious. You take the potato, you peel it into chip-like slices, you put it into some hot fat, and then you fry away, and then after some time you get them out, put them on a paper towel to get rid of the excess, and then...
Right, so Paul Merton was speaking then with the whistle when gained that extra point for doing so, and with other points in the round, he's now in the lead, just one ahead of Liza Tarbuck, and then Stephen Fry, and then Clement Freud. Stephen, it's your turn to begin, and we have here a Schadenfreude. Can you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
Not the daughter of one of our panellists, but a German word comes from two separate meanings. Schaden, meaning shame or disgrace. Freude, joy, as in Schiller's famous ode to that emotion. It really betokens that pleasure we take in other people's misfortunes. For example, I suppose everyone can remember Michael Portillo losing his seat. There was a great surge of national Schadenfreude. Whatever our political feelings, somehow I think almost every single member of the plebiscite or electorate in some way joined in with great enjoyment for that moment. However, Schadenfreude seems a very Teutonic kind of quality, and it's therefore no accident that there is no English phraseology or nomenclature for it, but we use instead the Tedeschi, as they would say in Italy, the Germanic, if you like, and I personally don't. Schadenfreude, of course, also means something slightly more sinister or unpleasant, which is a genuine delight in real misfortune. That, I think, is unforgivable.
That hasn't happened in Just a Minute for a long time. Someone started with a subject and went without hesitation, repetition, or deviation, was not challenged, and so he finished with it. Well done, Stephen, and your applause warranted your success. And what happens, of course, you want to get a point for speaking when the whistle went, but you get the bonus point for not being interrupted. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. Making jam. Tell us something about making jam in Just a Minute, starting now.
Making jam to spread on toast and butter is done by reducing fruit and sugar until the mass becomes thick. But Ranjit Singh, the famous cricketer, had a father who was the Jam of Nawanagar. And Jam is a title in India, which is like a Maharaja. And people look up to him enormously. I remember that cricketer.
Stephen Freud.
Wasn't he a cricketer before?
We had the cricketer before, yes.
I think so.
And so, Stephen, you've got in with 33 seconds. Making jam, Stephen, starting now.
Well, jam, of course, is what I call this programme, Just a Minute, J-A-M, a useful acronym. And making jam is not that easy. You find yourself tumbling over your words and causing all kinds of repetitions, hesitations and deviations, which is not what you're supposed to do if you wish to earn the points that put you in the lead that you so desperately desire. So making jam may be very easy in front of the mirror at home when you're listening, but by golly, when you're down here with the other panellists who are all so good at the game, it's frightfully difficult, and I wish I were better at it. At the moment, for some reason, I seem to be quite fluent, which is odd, because usually I end up not being, so making jam is not quite as tiresome as it sometimes can be.
Yes, Stephen, you made very good jam then, and you kept going to the whistle when gained that extra point, and you've gone forward in the lead just ahead of Paul Merton, Liza, Tarbuck, Clement, Freud in that order. Lisa, your turn to begin. The subject is tipping. Tell us something about tipping in Just a Minute, starting now.
Tipping could be seen as a gratuity to serving staff, possibly the norm would be 10%, or it could be called fly tipping when you've got a van full of goods and you just put it on a camber and get rid of a couple of old mattresses in a fridge down a railway embankment. You could also say it would be a helpful hint. For instance, my mother's favourite tip to me when I was a teenager was never let a man see you on the toilet, which in actual fact has held me in very good stead for years now. And it leaves me with a certain mystery, I like to think, although I could be wrong. Another way of tipping, you could tip the biscuit, which of course is an out-and-out lie, but they're going to buy that.
Paul Chalmers.
Out and out.
Out and out. Oh, yes. Yes.
Valiant, my lord.
So, Paul, you've got in with repetition on tipping, and 19 seconds left, starting now.
Fly tipping is a waste of time. They have no facility to spend the money, they have very short memories, and they really wouldn't do anything to do with it. Mind you, I think perhaps the fondest way I like to tip is when I get a world-famous London cab driver, someone like Bert Norris, who's known throughout the globe.
Oh, yes, so back to cab drivers. We had cab drivers in a show we did some time ago, I remember.
They won't remember.
No. Right. So, Paul, you were speaking of the whistle when, gained an extra point. You're now one ahead of Stephen Fry in that sequence. And, Stephen, your turn to begin now. My Giddy Aunt. Tell us something about My Giddy Aunt in Just a Minute, starting now.
Oh, yes, well, my mother's sister is more than ordinarily vertiginous, and that is why she's known as My Giddy Aunt. Teeters and skips all over the place. You're never quite sure how she manages to stand up for more than 5 minutes at a time, which very often, of course, she doesn't. It's not that she drinks. I wouldn't say that. She likes a sherry first thing in the morning and then carries on. And no more than 5 bottles a day. Maybe that's the secret to her giddiness.
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of 5. We had 5 minutes and then 5 bottles.
That's very good.
Yes,
Isn't he on the ball?
Very good.
Well, you would never have noticed that, Nicholas, would you? Ordinarily.
What do you mean? It's my job to
yes,
notice
sorry.
We know it's your job, but you would never have
it. When have I ever missed one?
Let me take you back.
No, I know. No, there were 5, 2 5s. 37 seconds, My Giddy Aunt with you, Paul, starting now.
There are lots of giddy aunts in the works of P.G. Wodehouse, and we have with us in Stephen Fry here a man who I'm very...
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
We're talking about My Giddy Aunt, not P.G. Wodehouse.
Well, he wrote a lot about my aunt.
The subject is My Giddy Aunt, and as you know, Clement, because you have been playing the game for a few years, that you can take the subject on the card or any of the words on the subject and interpret them as you wish. And he talked about giddy aunt, which does appear in P.G. Wodehouse quite consistently. And I don't think he has to make it my giddy aunt.
You're certainly wowing the audience.
I'm doing my best and giving you a very good line to come back and get a good laugh.
Or went a little bit tense there. It was almost as if we'd seen Liza on the lavatory, wasn't it? It was just like some moment of, oh dear.
I think we should go back to just a minute. And my giddy aunt is still with you, Paul. 31 seconds starting now.
Round and round she goes.
Clement, I hate to ask you, but all right, repetition. 30 seconds.
No, I said round and rounds.
No.
I did.
No.
I did. I promise you, I did.
Boo.
Well, it makes no sense. You know, I've been playing this long enough not to start with round and round. I said.
Well, I thought you were being very generous to Clement, who's training for once.
Yes, I thought you were like a footballer, who kicks the ball into touch after an injury, in order to give the other.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Clement, my giddy aunt. 30 seconds starting now.
I had a giddy aunt who used to, when I was at school, send me telegrams.
Stephen Challenge.
I mean, just for the sake of elegance, it was a shockingly split infinitive. Who used to, when I was at school, send me. This is BBC Radio 4, the guardian of the sacred English tongue.
I know, but when
when
you're speaking colloquially, in just a minute, under pressure, with 3 bright sparks breathing down your neck.
I did that for the sake of Mr. and Mrs. Mad of Chichester, who were going to write in and complain.
I'm not going to allow the split infinitive. No. Benefit of the doubt to Clement Freud. He keeps the subject.
Yeah.
24 seconds. My giddy aunt standing now. Starting now.
My giddy aunt sent a telegram which said, "Start worrying, letter follows." And it's quite difficult when you have relations of that ilk to be able to leave a set. I think.
Paul Challenge.
That was a sort of bit of a made-up word.
Yes.
Deviation. Or deviation in the English language.
Yeah, or you could have had hesitation.
Oh, I could have had
12
hesitation.
seconds.
I didn't want to rub it in.
My giddy aunt.
Having kicked the football into the crowd, I've run after it and put it back onto the pitch.
And you've got my giddy aunt again, and 12 seconds starting now.
I think it was perhaps Disraeli who, when he was addressing the Houses of Parliament in 1879, stood in front of those assembled...
Clement Challenge.
He only ever addressed the House of Parliament. People don't address Houses of Parliament.
Don't address the Houses of Parliament.
He was drunk.
That's why we love having you on the show. You've always got a good answer. Right. But it should have been the House of Parliament.
Giddy answer.
Right. So, Clement, 4 seconds, and you should know. My giddy aunt, starting now.
When my giddy aunt addressed the House of Commons, she said, "My lord..."
So, Clement Freud, speaking as a whistle-wind, gained that extra point, and he's now equal with Liza Tarbuck in 3rd place, just behind Stephen Fry, and Paul Merton's in the lead. And Paul, it's your turn to begin. Snail's pace, something that never happens in this show. Talk on the subject if you can, starting now.
A snail's pace is a very slow... Oh, this is too boring, isn't it? A snail's pace is something that's very slow delivery, and...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition.
What?
A snail's pace is a very slow...
Oh, yeah, but I ran it all together as one word the second time.
But he did repeat it, right?
I was going to try and sort of speak that slowly for about a minute. I couldn't be, I could feel this. I could feel the sense of life draining from everyone.
50 seconds with you, Clement, on snail's pace, starting now.
Paul was incredibly accurate in that snail's pace is slow, not speedy. Fast would not be a proper word.
Paul challenge.
Hesitation,
I agree. Snail's pace is back with you, Paul. 40 seconds, starting now.
Clement is looking at me now in an attempt to put me off, but he...
You challenge, Clement.
Deviation.
Why?
Nothing about snail's pace.
He didn't even get going, and we always love people to get going, to establish that they're going to talk about the subject. Right, 37 seconds with you, Paul, on snail's pace, starting now.
It's a very inaccurate form of measurement. You're much better off with metres, yards, feet, inches. A snail's pace is tiny. The poor little creatures barely have any feet at all. And if you were to take that as some kind of measure, you would be wasting...
Stephen Challenge.
Yeah, it's a bit slow on that, but feet twice. Feet was in the list of things being
Yes.
yards and feet, and then they barely have any feet.
Yes. And you've listened well, and you've got in with 22 seconds on snail's pace, Stephen, starting now.
Paul was quite right. Snail's helix, the common snail, has no feet whatsoever. It's a gastropod, therefore its stomach, if you like, is its foot. Strange animal, very, very lento, very largo. 2 berries there, I think.
3 berries.
3 berries.
And a helix.
And a helix, of course. It is.
Yes, the snail's pace. Back with you, Paul. 11 seconds starting now.
If you get a London cab, you'll find that they do not drive at a snail's pace. This is because they're on a certain measure. Their time, equipment, the clock that they have in the... Oh, blimey, I can't imagine.
So Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point then, and with others in the round, he's leapt forward. He's in a strong lead ahead of Stephen Fry and Clement, Freud and Liza Tarbuck in third place. And Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, my mistakes. Tell us something about those in just a minute, starting now.
Having led a life which is somewhere between immaculately impeccable and impeccably immaculate, I would find it very difficult to speak for 60 seconds about my mistakes, of which, as far as I can remember, there have been none.
Stephen Challenge.
Charming, but there was one, actually. There was a hesitation in the previous round, for example.
A hesitation in the previous round?
Yeah.
Right, it was.
He was saying, this is deviation, he was saying he can't speak about his mistakes, of which there have been none. And I would say there have been mistakes. For example, in the previous round he made a mistake.
He did make a mistake,
so
yes.
He has made mistakes.
Very clever.
Very few,
yes.
I grant you.
So, Stephen, the correct challenge. 43 seconds, my mistakes, starting now.
One of my cardinal errors, one of my supreme blunders, of course, was to...
Paul Challenge.
We had a repetition of one of mine.
Oh, yes.
One of mine,
I do this.
Yes,
it's so silly.
Yes, I know.
I always repeat myself.
If you're an emphatic person, yes, you will. 39 seconds available. Paul, my mistakes, starting now.
We all make mistakes, and I suppose we hope that the biggest mistakes that we make are the ones...
Stephen Challenge.
Who makes? We all make mistakes, the biggest mistakes we make.
Yes.
Yes.
It's catching, right. 34 seconds back with you, Stephen. My mistakes, starting now.
There was a repetition, for example, when I was speaking earlier. I said the same word twice. You're not supposed to do that in this game. It counts as one of my mistakes, and I'm very ashamed and embarrassed about it. I go all red at the very thought of the thing. I hope.
Paul Challenge.
Deviation, he hasn't gone red.
No, you're quite right.
He didn't go red, and he didn't go red.
No, he didn't blush. You're quite right. 23 seconds, Paul, with you. My mistakes, starting now.
When I was at school, one of the subjects I was particularly bad at was mathematics, and no matter how hard the teachers tried to drum the basic code of arithmetic into my head, it refused to stay there. I remember one particular algebraic...
Stephen Challenge.
Both remember and one particular.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Stephen, you're back in again. 7 seconds. My mistakes, starting now.
Errata, the Latin for mistakes. You often see that as a slip popped into books when there's been some sort of fallacy at the printers.
Clement Freud Challenge.
Hesitate.
A little hesitation there, yes. And you've got in with 1 second to go, Clement, on my mistakes, starting now.
In 1984.
So Clement Freud got the point for speakers, the whistle went, and he's still in third place. Stephen Fry's ahead, and out in the lead is Paul Merton. And Liza Tarbuck, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is queuing. Tell us something about queuing in this game, starting now.
Queuing, it would seem to me, would be a chiefly British occupation. I think it probably came from the Second World War, where there were shortages of everything from transport to food, and therefore to stand in line and wait for something seems that it was the right thing to do.
I think Lisa got excited about the fact that she repeated seams and stopped.
I think I repeated something,
and
actually.
then something as well.
Yes,
yeah.
and you... Now, sometimes if you keep going...
No, don't be sorry.
Oh, no.
Be happy.
I'm pleased.
So, Stephen, you've got in first, and it's queuing, and there are 42 seconds available, starting now.
Stephen Lees, they say, has the best queuing action in the professional game of snooker at the moment, though for my money, Henry is very hard to beat. It's all about creating that kind of pendulum with the right arm, if that's
Have that back with a bit of hesitation, please.
Yes. He was trying to get the left arm out and didn't fail. There we are, 33 seconds queuing.
Oh, Zeus.
Honestly, this audience has got rotten minds, haven't they? Just because he's sitting next to Lisa, you mustn't get him to jump to conclusions.
I think
right?
she knows she's safe with me. Though, I have to say, if anyone would make me turn, it would be this plumptious young thing, I have to say.
He's so kind.
I think you had to cover that one up.
True,
Yes,
true.
right.
Gorgeous.
So 33 seconds, Lisa, queuing with you starting now.
It's very disappointing when you come out of Euston and look down to where the taxi rank might be and you see that the queue is in actual fact spilling onto the concourse. You imagine that you might be there for a good 50 hour.
Challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes. Right.
And why does spilling onto the concourse sound so rude? Really? It sounds almost unbroadcastable, doesn't it? I don't know why. It isn't, though. It's as pure as the different what you do.
Well, that's what we get the letters about, and, from countries abroad. What does it mean? 20 seconds, Clement, queuing starting now.
I once worked on a television program where the floor manager said, "Will you need auto queuing?" And I said, "Absolutely not, because it will do me great physical harm." And queuing has been close to my heart ever since, because I'm basically masochistic. Queuing for buses, trains.
Clement Freud, speakers, the whistle when gained an extra point. He's creeping up on Stephen Fry, which is rather sinister, but I mentioned in the game, of course. And Lisa's just behind them, and out in the lead is Paul Merton. And Stephen Fry, your turn to begin. The subject is eating humble pie. Good subject. Speak on it if you can. 60 seconds, starting now.
Umbles is a word that used to mean offal and various bits of intestine. Some people think that's where the phrase eating humble pie comes from. I think it's necessary and sufficient unto itself. Its obvious significance, which is that's what Americans call eating crow. That's to say, some sort of mortification after you've made a mistake and you wish to apologise and show that it was your fault. Mea culpa maxima, etc., and so forth. Eating humble pie is not something politicians are known for doing. So often they tend to excuse themselves and hide in a welter of reasons and so forth as to why it is that they shouldn't apologise or excuse themselves for whatever it is they've done. However, eating humble pie is a necessary, I think, human attribute of decency, and if you like, grace. Not a word we hear that often, but one perhaps we should be attended to in these dark times of ours. Eating humble pie is something Uriah Heep did not do, however much he professed to humility. Various other characters in Shakespeare and great literature have eaten humble pie. Perhaps that's the great arc which literature travels. It shows...
Paul Talent.
I think it was the repetition of great.
Yes, that's right, yeah. What are you groaning for? That's what the game's about. Somebody challenges.
I was ashamed to interrupt the flow, though.
I know.
I was spilling all over the concourse there, wasn't I?
I tell you, actually, Paul, you're not going to be very popular with this audience now because you've got him with 1 second to go. Yes, well, there you are. But it was a repetition. No, we've got to be fair. We do play just a minute. That's what we're here for. Have a laugh and a fun and play a game. And so, without the rules of the game, there wouldn't be the fun. 1 second, Paul, on eating humble pie, starting now.
Eating humble pie.
And as we go into the last round, Lisa's just behind Clement Freud, and Clement's just a little bit way behind Stephen Fry, and there are a few points behind our leader, Paul Merton. And Paul, it's also your turn to begin, and the subject is doodling. Tell us something about doodling in just a minute, starting now.
It's something I've been doing in the last half an hour on this piece of paper in front of me, just doodling away little shapes. I tend to do pyramids and triangles. I don't know why. Other people, they may prefer to do something circular. There's something odd.
Lisa, challenge. Something, yes. So, Lisa, you've got him with 45 seconds.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Specialist subject.
Yeah.
Specialist stuff, yes.
Just, lie back and learn.
45 seconds, doodling, Lisa, starting now.
When I doodle, the shape I prefer is usually a leaf, and it always ends up into a peace lily, which I'm sure an analyst would have the most fantastic time over. Well, I'm assuming that because I'm assuming I'm very interesting, aren't I? So other people like Paul actually doodle squares or triangles or ziggity-zag things, which I think might indicate some level of mental indigestion.
Clement challenged.
I think there was an error.
I bow to that.
Yes, right. 17 seconds available. Tell us something about doodling, Clement, starting now.
There's also verbal doodling. You can take nouns and verbs, adjectives, adjuncts, and...
adjuncts. Adjectives, possibly adverbs, certainly adjuncts.
I take...
What part of speech?
I take adjuncts most evenings.
Junks. Fair enough. Take your adjuncts.
Right. I was told to take adjuncts.
Oh, fair enough.
You're
an adjunkie.
Stephen, 9 seconds. Doodling starting now.
Yes, vulvic, I think, is the word that seems to describe Liza's doodlings. Mine also follow that shape. I'm merely quoting some of the theories expounded by followers of Clement's grandfather.
So, Stephen Fry once again brought the show to a close as he brought the round to a close. Gained that extra point for doing so. I'll give you the final situation. Liza Tarbuck, you finished just in 4th place. You were a little way behind Clement Freud, who was in 3rd place. He was only just behind Stephen Fry in 2nd place. But out in the lead, with quite a large number of points, was Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, you are our winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you for our 4 intrepid and delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Stephen Fry, Liza Tarbuck and Clement Freud. Also to thank Janet Staplehurst for helping me with the score and also blowing the whistle when the 60 seconds was up. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're grateful to our producer, Claire Jones, who produces and directs the show, and we're also very grateful to our audience here in the Radio Theatre in London who've cheered us on our way. From our audience, from the panel, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, goodbye until we great the air and play Just a Minute again. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you, hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 clever, intelligent, witty, humorous players of the game who once more are going to pit their wits, their verbal ingenuity, their creative intelligence, and all kinds of other things they brought with them as they try and speak on the subject that I give them, and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those 4 people are, in no order of seniority, Graham Norton, Jenny Eclair, Tim Rice, and Tony Hawkes. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who is going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the lovely Harrogate Theatre, in the heart of this beautiful spa town of Harrogate in that great county of Yorkshire. And in front of us we have an enthusiastic Yorkshire audience ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Graham Norton. And who better? Graham, will you talk on the subject of more haste, less speed, and your time starts now.
More haste, less speed. More haste, less speed. That is the mantra repeated in the mind daily of the driver of the Trans-Pennine Express.
Jenny, sorry, you were challenged.
Of the. He said of the twice.
I know he did.
Is that not...
No, it's a harsh challenge, but it's correct. Yes.
It's probably not a good time to tell them I'm from Lancashire either, is it? Now they hate me! Can I give Graham the round back?
No, you can't give it to him back. No, sometimes we resist the temptation on little things like that. But it was a correct challenge, Jenny. So you have the subject, which is more haste, less speed, and there are 47 seconds available starting now.
Children are often victims of the more haste, less speed curse, refusing to tie up their shoelaces, tripping over the stairs, knocking out every tooth in their head, necessitating lengthy visits to an orthodontist. Couldn't you just slap their legs?
Right. Tony, you challenge Tony Hawkes.
Bit picky, this one. Yeah. But if you'd knocked out all the teeth in your head, you wouldn't go to an orthodontist.
Yes, it's... no, I think it's very accurate, actually, because you go to a dentist first. You might later go to an orthodontist, but yes, Tony, a correct challenge. You have 30 seconds. The subject is, and of course, a point for a correct challenge. That's how it works in this show. More haste, less speed is the subject, and 30 seconds starting now.
More haste, less speed. I intended to say this to a taxi driver once, but ended up saying more hash, less speed, and ended up at a drug dealer's in...
Tim... No, Graham, you challenge first.
Ended up? A repetition over.
Yes, he did indeed, Graham. Yes, yes. More haste, less speed, and there are 19 seconds available starting now.
The countryside around here is, I'm told, very beautiful, but who knows? Such is the soaring speed of the train as you whiz through the countryside.
And Tony Hawk's a challenge.
Did he say train in his last...
No, I didn't.
No, he did not. So Graham still has the subject. Another point for incorrect challenge. And Graham, 10 seconds starting now.
More haste, less speed, as Betty Ford said at the party, handing round trays. I don't understand this expression myself. I feel that...
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point, and on this occasion it was Graham Norton, who with other points in that round, you won't be surprised to hear, has got a strong lead. Jenny, Claire, will you take the next round? And the subject is how to look good in photos. Tell us something about how to look good in photos. I should explain to our listeners she's now demonstrating
I'm
it.
pulling one of my faces.
I know you were, that's why
I have 37 faces.
I know, but as this is radio, I try to
I'm
explain
wasted on radio. Sorry, where are we?
Where are we? Well, I don't think you are wasted on radio because your verbal ingenuity is brilliant, and that's why you're back on the show again. Jenny, tell us something about how to look good in photos. 60 seconds starting now.
Well, how fortuitous that I should get this round. I am the mistress of looking good in photos due to a misspent youth in a photomy booth, sucking in cheekbones, perfecting the art.
Graham has challenged you, Jenny.
I think there was a hesitation.
No, it wasn't.
I think it was my speech.
Or maybe there wasn't.
They're being partisan right from the start, aren't they? No, she was keeping going.
Lancashire.
So, Jenny, an incorrect challenge. You get a point for that. You have 47 seconds to continue on how to look good in photos starting now.
Here's a handy hint. If you want to look good in a photo, stand next to something that's much uglier and older than you are. May I suggest a ruined castle or Barbara Cartland? Oh, she's dead. We have to pick her up there.
Tony Hawk's the challenger. Yes, Tony.
You can't get a ruined castle into a photo booth.
I was out of the photomy booth.
Oh, well, you've moved on, had you?
Oh, she moved on.
And are your teeth in your mouth now, or are they still...
Jenny, you have how to look good in photos. Another point, of course. 37 seconds available, starting now.
Lighting is essential, but so is makeup. I tell you the downside of looking good in photos. I had some fantastic shots done last year for a show of mine, which was called Middle-Aged Bimbo. And
Yes, Tim, what was your challenge?
Well, there was a definite hesitation.
No, there wasn't. No, you can't have retrospective. No, there was not a hesitation. But let's carry on. Jenny, you got another point for incorrect challenge. You keep the subject. 25 seconds. How to look good in photos starting now.
The worst thing about looking fantastic in photos... Yes, I've said that fantastic before. I know. Take it.
Tim, you've got him this time.
Yes, this time, I think I'm right. There was a fantastic.
Yes. Tim, correct challenge. 21 seconds. How to look good in photos starting now.
Photos are very technical things, so looking good in them is mighty difficult. You've got to make sure that you don't have red eye, which is what happens when the flash gets you at the wrong moment. Your eyeballs turn this horrible colour red, which is not the same as red eye, because red eye is one word.
Jenny, you challenged first. What was it?
Well... red and red eye.
No, it doesn't matter. This is radio, and red eye, even if it's hyphenated, we accept it because she repeated the word red.
Ah, but then he went on to say red eye again. He said, it's not the same.
No, that was after you buzzed.
That was after you buzzed. And you have a point for a correct challenge, Jenny, and you're moving forward there. It's repetition of red. So that was correct. And you have 8 seconds. You take back the subject, how to look good in photos, starting now.
Naomi Campbell, Kate Moss, they look quite nice in photos. The rest of us should never be snapped in a swimwear outfit. Oh, isn't that depressing?
Oh, Tim, you challenged.
Snapped. She used snapped about half an hour ago.
You did? Yes, you did repeat it. So, Tim, you've cleverly got in with 1 second to go on how to look good in photos. Yeah, that's gone down well, hasn't it? Starting now.
Standing
right. Tim Rice, speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point. He's now equal in second place with Graham Norton. They're both behind our leader, Jenny Clare, and Tony Hawkes follows them. And Tim Rice, your turn to begin. The subject, Betty's Tea Shop. I should explain to our listeners the reason everybody in the audience has clapped is because it's a very famous haunt here in Harrogate. And Tim, talk on the subject with 60 seconds to go, starting now.
When I was invited to join this distinguished programme of intellectual stimulation, my real reason for coming all this way up to this beautiful
Graham, you challenge first. What was it?
Some sort of stopping and a possible repetition of beautiful. Just a bit of hesitation, everything, really.
I hadn't finished the second word.
No, you stopped.
But you stopped.
You did stop.
As you realised
you
were hesitating, you paused, so that's hesitation. So, Graham, you got in first. 51 seconds. Betty's Tea Shop, starting now.
It is a little-known fact that Betty, the founder of the lovely tea shop, was also the inventor of the doily. Late at night, she would toil away in a workshop with bits of lace, thinking, where can I throw this? I know, I'll open a shop. And I'll import tea from so far away I can charge £10 a leaf. I don't understand how that woman has the gall to do so, and yet people flock there. I think there must be something in the tea, because otherwise people would just slap the waitresses.
Yes. Tim, what is your challenge?
People.
People, yes, a repetition of people.
What's your challenge? People.
Yeah.
Right.
I hate people.
So you have the subject back again, Betty's Tea Shop. 16 seconds available, starting now.
Yes, Betty's Tea Shop was the sole purpose of my trek up north. I could not wait to sample the sarnies, the sandwiches...
And, Tony, you challenge first.
Well, first of all, I thought there might have been a hesitation, but I happen to know he hasn't been anywhere near Betty's Tea Shop.
You've been on the train with them coming up here.
Yes, I have. Yes. It's a bit of a sneaky one, but...
It is a sneaky one, but it is correct after all.
I never said I'd been there. I said I couldn't wait to get there.
Oh. You obviously could wait.
It's shut.
No, that's true. You know, I'll be fair. I'm always fair in this game. Tim, you did say... No, he didn't hesitate. Oh. You did say that this is the reason you wanted to come here, which is probably quite false. You'd had him for that. I think you could have had him. But no, he didn't actually say he'd been there. So, Tim... an incorrect challenge. You keep Betty's Tea Shop, not literally, but you can have the subject of Betty's Tea Shop with 7 seconds to go, starting now.
As you walk through the automatic doors with their laser beams keeping up...
Jenny, yes.
Total deviation. It hasn't got automatic doors and it hasn't got
laser
fluorescent or anything like that. He hasn't been there. Doesn't
no,
want to go
I was talking about
there.
the airport to come up here.
Tim, are you sure you didn't train as a solicitor? You did, didn't you?
I did briefly,
you can
yes.
tell.
I failed it.
Yeah. Jenny, a correct challenge.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicholas.
4 seconds. Tell us something about Betty's Tea Shop, starting now.
It's not licensed, you know. I'm not that fussed about going. You can only get tea.
So Jenny Clare, speaking as a whistle when gained that extra point, and she's increased her lead with other points in the round, and she's only just ahead of Tim Rice, and then Graham Norton, and then Tony Hawkes, in that order. And Tony, your turn to begin. The subject now is management courses. Tell us something about that. Tony, you start now.
Management courses through my veins. I love management. I've been on many management courses, one for Arsenal FC. I studied for 3 years only to find they'd already given the job to Arsene Wenger, which was very disappointing. The same thing happened with Liverpool and Gerard Houllier. Bloody French, but that's another matter. Management courses happen a lot, I believe, up here in the lovely town of Harrogate, where people can come and do.
Jenny, you put a chance.
It's just a tiny hesitation.
No, it was hesitation.
There.
It was, yes.
Yes. He ran out of steam, didn't he?
He did run out of steam, yes. He was trying to think of all the other football managers he could go to and trying to link them up without hesitating is difficult. So, Jenny, you got in first, and there are 30 seconds on management courses starting now.
Do you know, I'd rather stab myself in the eyes with one of Betty's silver cake forks than go on a management course. Fortunately, I've never been gainfully employed in my life, and I've never had the need. But don't you have to...
Yes. Tim, you challenged.
2 nevers.
Yes, and waffling as well.
Yeah, and waffling.
But that's not within the rules of just a minute. You can waffle as much as you like, provided you don't hesitate, repeat anything, or deviate. And Tim, 19 seconds are available. You take over management courses starting now.
In stark contrast to the rather depressing talks that we've heard from the other panelists on this subject, I find management courses extremely interesting. And they fire me up with enthusiasm every time I think about them. What fantastic deeds one can achieve on a course. You go out to some remote part of Lancashire.
Well, Tim Rice kept going on that rather boring subject with a certain aplomb until the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and he's now only 1 point behind our leader, Jenny Eclair. Graham, it's your turn to begin. The subject is budgies. I don't know whether you are a budgie fan, but tell us something about budgies in just a minute, starting now.
Do lemons have legs? Inquired the drunk at the party. No, said the hostess. Oh dear, I've just squeezed your budgie into my gin. That is one of the first jokes I can remember being told. Perhaps it was because of that I then wanted to have a budgie of my own. Billy, he was called. He couldn't talk or sing. In fact, his only talent was being able to spread his droppings halfway across a large living room from a tiny cage. That's a gift.
And Tim, you challenge.
I think he got a pigeon.
Why?
Well, this bird he's claiming to talk about has none of the attributes of a budgie. Clearly, it is not a budgie. Clearly, it's deviation.
Have you had a budgie?
Well, yes. When I was very small.
I don't think you should bring his private life into this. No, the thing is...
They're useless. They're so pointless.
Every budgie I've met sings and trills happily. Either you're a very cruel man, or it was a pigeon.
No.
Or it was Ireland without central heating and it was quite depressed.
No, actually, budgies don't talk unless they've been trained by a human to do so. They don't naturally do it. They might naturally sing.
I think Tim knew they didn't come out of the egg going, hello!
No, but my daughter had budgies when she was a little girl, and I know, and some of them are somewhat inhibited. And what's it?
Can we talk... I want to talk more about budgies during the round and less in between.
Yes, all right. So he could have had a budgie that was inhibited and didn't sing very well, and so I'm going to give Graham the benefit of the doubt and say keep the subject of budgies with 28 seconds to go, starting now.
I love that little bird, my feathered friend. I would skip home from school and go, Mommy, out of the way! I'm off to see the thing in the barred thing in the thing.
Tony, you challenge first.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
There may just have been a repetition of thing.
There were too many things.
Oh, right.
Yes.
That's fine.
You were getting away from saying the other word, you used the word thing and then repeated the word thing. So, Tony, you've got in on budgies. 17 seconds available starting now.
When I was 9 years old, my father brought home a pet pigeon, and I said to him, I don't want one of those. There'll be muck all over the...
And, Jenny, you
He's
challenge.
talked now a lot about pigeons, hasn't he? Not budgies. Do you think?
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Hang on.
I thought this round was budgies, not pigeons.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, and I think in just a minute you have to establish, if you're going to compare, you have to establish much more rapidly that you're on the subject of budgies. He seemed to go off on pigeons. Do you want to run the game? No, I think it's a fair challenge.
I've been going about 4 seconds.
You've actually been going 7 seconds.
Oh, I stand corrected.
Jenny, budgies is with you. 9 seconds starting now.
Some people are massively allergic to budgies and they develop chest infections, a bit like pneumonia. So think before you buy one for your nana. Another thing you must do is stimulate...
So Jenny Eclair with points in the round, including one of his Meals whistle went, has moved forward. She's slightly further ahead of Tim Rice and Graham Norton and Tony Hawks in that order. And Jenny, it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is, very good for you, Jenny, high spirits. 60 seconds starting now.
You don't have to be drunk to have high spirits, though the two things aren't mutually exclusive. I started my journey to Harrogate in high spirits. but British Rail put paid to that. Also, something else that really unnerved me was how many people were asking Graham for his autograph, ignoring me. So my high spirits turned to sour grapes by the time we got to the station. Oh, Mr. Norton, can I have your autograph? Oh, I think you're really good.
Tim, what was your challenge?
We had a repeat of autograph.
Yeah.
Yes, you had the autograph.
So did he. There were about 300.
Honestly, I did try. When I was signing about the paper in front of my face, and I was just going, ask her. Yeah. I've got her on this train for hours. She'll sulk. Ask her.
Yeah. Who is it? Is it Sue Pollard?
So, Tim, you challenge first, and you've got the subject of high spirits. There are 35 seconds starting now.
This giraffe goes into a bar and says, "The high balls are on me," and all the other animals were extremely thrilled at this fantastically generous cocktail offer. High spirits. I personally go for whiskey with just a dash of ice. This is the way the Americans tend to drink it, and normally I don't follow that nation slavishly, but in this particular case, I feel that ice is the one thing you can add to that scotch.
And Graham challenged.
No. Was there a repetition of ice?
Yes,
there was. Cock.
Oh, was there?
Yes.
There was. You're kidding?
Yes.
How funny is that?
Graham, you listen well. You have a correct challenge. You have 13 seconds. The subject is high spirits, starting now.
I imagine that people who go into the other world and turn into spirits, if for some
Jenny,
reason...
you challenged.
I wish I hadn't, because I was wrong. I'm so sorry.
So, what were you thinking?
It was spirits, but that's in the title.
That's right, yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Just to reassure our listeners, you can not only use the subject, but also any of the words in the subject. You can repeat those in the show, and he repeated spirits. So, 5 seconds. You have another point, Graham, and you continue on high spirits, starting now.
When I worked in restaurants, we would call them dusty spirits, for no one could be fagged to get in a chair to get up there to clean.
And so, Graham Norton speaking as a whistle when gained an extra point. He's now equal with Tim Rice in second place, just behind Jenny Eclair and just ahead of Tony Hawkes. Tim Rice, your turn to begin. The subject is having the last say. There are 60 seconds, as usual, starting now.
Here is an interesting paradox. I am talking to you tonight, and it will be extremely interesting, on having the last say, and yet I'm having the first
Graham
say.
challenged you almost immediately. Yes, Graham.
Was the repetition of interesting?
No.
No.
Wasn't it an interesting paradox? And then you're going to be very interesting.
Ice, I repeated.
No. Damn, I thought I was on a roll. It was an interesting paradox, and then
Interesting, then interested, I think he did.
Yes, he said interesting and interested.
Yeah.
I'm not at all sure.
Tim, you have the benefit of the doubt. You have 53 seconds, having the last say, starting now.
Even Heisenberg's uncertainty principle doesn't have the paradoxical intrinsic interest that this...
Oh, Tony Hawk's challenge.
He's talking nonsense.
I grant you a complete halt. I'm glad
you were
Tony
going
stopped
off in
me.
a direction you've never been before, and you thought, anyway, it doesn't really matter. Tony, you had a correct challenge. There are 43 seconds available. You have having the last say, starting now.
Being a keen observer on life and noticing things other people don't, it's come to my attention that politicians sometimes like to have the last say. I watch them on Question Time and such a
Jenny, you challenge first.
Well, he developed a speech impediment. And hesitated.
Yes, we interpret that as hesitation.
Yes.
So, Jenny, correct challenge. 29 seconds. The subject is having the last say, starting now.
It's very important to have the last say when you're arguing with your partner. So I'm joking. It's not
Graham,
my fault. Some water went
Graham.
down
that old excuse.
It's one of those shows where have a drink of water.
Cough.
Yes.
No, I think, Jenny, I've got to be strict within the rules of just a minute. You had started, and it was unfortunate, but that is...
I choked.
That you choked. Yes. Graham, you have the subject, 25 seconds, having the last say, starting now.
Dear God, I wish someone would have the last say on this subject. Giving someone your last Rolo is preferable to giving someone the last say.
Yes, Jenny, you challenge.
Yes, all right.
Someone.
So you got it back.
Loads
Yes,
of
you've got a point. And if you kept going all that time, you wouldn't have got that point. So it all works out in the end, doesn't it? 15
Jenny,
seconds.
you all right with me, Neill?
Jenny, you have the subject back, having the last say, 15 seconds, starting now.
The only way to have the last say with your partner is to bore him.
Yes. Tim, you challenged first, yes.
There was a repeat of partner.
Yes, that's right. Your partner came into it. Tim, you have the subject, you have which is having the last say. The 12 seconds available, starting now.
I had a lovely budgie when I was a nipper called Bob, and he was a sweet animal, but he always insisted on having...
Graham.
Deviation? For it is not an animal, it's a bird.
But animals are birds.
Birds are animals.
No, birds are birds. Animals are animals.
No.
Pigs can't fly.
We are all animals.
You
are an animal.
We're all the
Let me write this down. It's very deep.
And Tim, an incorrect challenge. So you have 5 seconds to continue on having the last say, starting now.
As my final word, I'd like to say the chairmanship of this programme has reached new heights of excellence.
So Tim Rice, speaking as a whistle-wind, has moved forward. Oh, and Tim is now equal with Jenny Eclair in the lead, just ahead of Graham Norton and then Tony Hawks in that order. And we're moving into the final round. And Graham Norton, it's your turn to begin. The subject is showing your face. You have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Showing your face is when you sort of pop into a party and go, hi, where's the food? Take it all and leave. Not showing your face would be not going to the party.
Jenny, he hesitated and then he went into repeat. It was really bad.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
I
Jenny,
didn't deviate though.
You didn't. Not yet. You would have done.
No. 52 seconds, Jenny. Showing your face, starting now.
Radio's very difficult medium to show your face on. Thank goodness we all chorus. It's the only thing you can do that's kind to the over 40-year-old woman. Oh.
Tony, you challenge.
Well, she stopped, but there are other things you can do.
Yeah, there are other things you do. She stopped. She thought of what she'd said and brought herself to a halt. Yeah. Tony, correct challenge. Another point. 42 seconds. Showing your face, starting now.
Jenny was absolutely accurate. The beauty of radio is that you don't need to show your face, but the beauty of your voice will
And
come.
Tim challenged first.
Two beauties.
There were two beauties, yes.
Yes,
Tim,
you're right. Beauty of radio.
You have 34 seconds.
Very pleasing just to hear you put your hand up and say two beauties there.
You have a correct challenge, Tim, and you have 34 seconds. Showing your face, starting now.
However unattractive you are, it's usually better to show your face than other parts of your anatomy to complete strangers. On the other hand, if you are intimate with somebody, then anything goes. You can let rip with your elbow, your thigh, your knickers,
And
your...
Jenny challenge.
Your.
Yes.
You're so right.
We might let one yaw go, but 3 or 4.
Yes,
no.
I agree.
Jenny.
It's terrible. It's really... I've lost form.
You're not doing too bad.
I
Only
might
3
go
points
now.
behind our leader, Jenny Eclair, who has the subject. She has 23 seconds. Showing your face, Jenny, starting now.
You don't want to show your face if you're robbing a bank. Wear a balaclava, for heaven's sake. They've got CCTV cameras, you know.
Graham, challenge.
It seems churlish, but there was CC.
Yes, CC. Listen,
Oh, right, so
audience.
there wasn't.
No.
She just did.
She repeated C. Graham got in first. Just 17 seconds. Showing your face, starting now.
In remote villages of Yorkshire at county fairs, people enter their faces in competitions. This is known as showing your face.
And Tim, challenge.
You wouldn't have a county fair at a remote village. You'd have it in a fairly important rural centre. You'd have it somewhere terrific, like Harrogate.
Yes, that's right. You have them in the country outside, but it's not near a little country village.
Correct.
I think that's a good challenge of deviation.
It's an annoying challenge.
I know it is. But accurate. So, Tim, you have a point, of course. 10 seconds are available. Tell us something about showing your face, starting now.
If you want to look good in a photograph, I recommend you show your face. This is more often than not the best feature.
And the Tony challenge first.
Sorry, I didn't hear it.
I think you said best in the first.
That's right. When you were talking before, Tim, you actually said
The best thing when you meet
can
somebody.
do is to show your face. So, Tony, well listened. You have got in with 5 seconds to go on the subject. Showing your face, starting now.
I always show my face whenever I go to a party. There's no point in covering it over with...
Well, let me give you the final situation, as we have no more time to play. Just a minute. Tony Hawks, who's done so well in the past, came... he only finished just in 4th place. He was... No, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a contribution which is so important. And he was a little way behind Graham Norton. And this is very interesting. He was only 1 point behind Tim Rice, who was only 1 point behind Jenny Eclair. So, Jenny, we say you are the winner this week. just shows the generosity of the Yorkshire people, you know, a lassie from Lancashire, and they applaud her to the ceiling for winning the game. Well done. It only remains me to say thank you to our 4 fine players of the game. Graham Norton, Jenny Eclair, Tim Rice, Tony Hawkes. Thank Janet Staplehurst for helping with the score, blowing her whistle so well. We thank our producer, Claire Jones, for the way she directs it all. And we are deeply indebted to Ian Messiter, who created the game. And we're also indebted to this audience here in the Harrogate Theatre, who've cheered us on our way in true Yorkshire style. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from our panel, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute.